Good morning. It's 9 o'clock and time for the July 12th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County. We're going to begin with an invocation by Stan Bowling, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. But before the invocation actually starts, I'd like a moment of silence, please, for the fallen officers in Dallas. Please rise.
Father God, this morning we are grateful and reminded that you are unchanging. And at this time, we just take hold of your unchanging hand. Thank you that we can do that. We ask that all would do that and be changed by you. You are a great, happy, and fearsome mystery, and we thank you for that. But we know in times where there is injustice, there is hatred, there is violence, it seems like that's all the time, we turn to you. And we turn to you together. And we are so grateful that we can do that together this morning. We ask that you would not only guide us, but give us strength and your power to do what's good and to do what's right, to simply stand when and where we need to stand and to move forward at your direction. So we are your instruments this morning. We ask that you would guide this board and all who will carry out the decisions that are made this morning. And we ask that that be done in a way that glorifies you. In your name, amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Bowling and Commissioner O'Brien. We'll move to additions and deletions of the agenda, where there's item 14E1, which has been asked to be pulled, so that will be deleted. There's an addition, 8W, to the consent agenda. The attorney has added 13E regarding the roof as an emergency item. And there's an item under presentations, which includes Doug Carlson, who can't be here before 11. But we also have two commissioner items on their matters. I'll ask if either one of them would like their matter brought up to be basically part of the mosquito presentation on Zika virus.
Mine is related, yes, sir.
Okay, so both of you are happy to have it then. Very good. We'll do that. Anything else to be added?
Mr. Chairman?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Davis.
Yes, I have a request from Susan Meal to be put under the citizen input portion. She had the application in last week, but due to the length of the meeting in her schedule, she wasn't able to make it, and she just barely missed the deadline this time, so I'd appreciate your indulgence if we could put her back in that slot.
Okay, so you want her under
Let's see, 5D, is it?
Oh, so you want her under presentations, not the...
Whatever, that's fine too, yes.
Oh,
That's 5D's fine.
what's your preference?
5D.
Okay, fine. We'll add her under 5D. That's good. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
We have the motion from Commissioner Fleischer, second from Commissioner O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
All passes unanimously. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll now move to proclamations and presentations. The first is a presentation of a proclamation designating the week of July 17th as Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup Week in Indian River County. Commissioner O'Brien will present this to Steve Haggis, Site Coordinator and past President of the Marine Industries of the Treasure Coast. Good morning, Captain. Come on up. Good morning. And I'll now turn it over to Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure to make this presentation. It is a proclamation designating the week of July 17th, 2016 as the Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup Week in Indian River County. Whereas on Saturday, July 23rd, 2016, the Marine Industries Association of the Treasure Coast, in conjunction with the Florida Inland Navigation District, will conduct the 9th annual Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup. And whereas this event will attract approximately 950 volunteers who will participate in cleaning up the waterways of Indian River, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. And whereas 20 designated sites throughout the 3 counties will serve as registration and disposal sites for the volunteers to work out of. And whereas numerous waterfront homeowners associations have been recruited to clean up their own waterfronts. And whereas in 2015, over 7.9 tons of trash was collected from approximately 125 miles of waterways, with an expectation of a significantly larger amount to be collected this year with an increased volunteer effort. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the week of July 17 through July 24th, 2016 be designated as Treasure Coast Waterway Cleanup Week in Indian River County, and all citizens are encouraged to use this occasion to foster appreciation for the Treasure Coast waterways and assist in the cleanup efforts. Adopted this 12th day of July, 2016, signed by all commissioners. And I guess, Steve, the good news is that more volunteers, but the bad news is means there's more trash out there.
There's always more trash. Indian River County has a significant amount of spoil islands, which tends to be where most of the trash is found from the weekend revelers. Sebastian has a very proactive program where they go out quarterly and do theirs, and they sync it with our cleanup, which has been going on for 9 years. I think they've been doing about 6. Every year, no matter where we go, we can find more trash. Our whole goal is to work our way out of this whole thing. We don't want to do it anymore.
Right.
This is my 9th year. I've been there since the beginning, and I'm glad to be helping Indian River County do it. Our disposal sites this year are the Vero Marine Center, Riverside Park Boat Ramp, Vero Beach Municipal Marina, Loggerhead Marina, my favorite, Wabasso Causeway, the Sebastian Main Street Ramp, and Sebastian Inlet Marina in Micco. So we've got it pretty much covered. We ask everybody, if you wish to come and help, please go online and register there. It makes things much simpler. Our online site is tcwwaterwaycleanup.com. And once again, thank you, commissioners, for this proclamation.
Very good. Thank you, Steve. Hope you have good weather this weekend.
Let's hope
Yeah,
so.
that's good.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
We will now move to the presentation of a proclamation designating the month of July 2016 as Parks and Recreation Month. Commissioner Fletcher will present to Mr. Michael Zito and Lorenzo Jefferson, Parks Foreman, Beth Powell, Conservation Lands Manager, and Scott Seeley, Recreation Coordinator. Good morning, Mr. Zito, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor and privilege to have the opportunity to present this proclamation to our Parks and Recreation team. We have a select few before us, and there might be a couple of more if we had the entire team there. And my point is, folks, thank you for doing so much with so little. We have limited human resources, and this team really pulls it off every step of the way. And anybody attending any of the functions wants to know where the rest of the team is. You're it. Thank you. With that, I'd like to present the proclamation designating the month of July 2016 as Parks and Recreation Month. Whereas Park and Recreation Month was established in 1985 and celebrates its 31st year in the state and nationwide. Whereas passive and active recreation in Indian River County significantly enhances the quality of life for the residents and visitors. And whereas the passive recreation nourishes a love of the outdoors, provides an appreciation of the natural environment, and contributes to a healthy community and economy. Whereas county parks and conservation areas preserve the ecological beauty of our community and improve the water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve air quality, and are aesthetically pleasing, and provide open green space for people and valuable habitat for wildlife. And whereas Indian River County is fortunate to have many beautiful parks, playgrounds, ball fields, golf courses, swimming facilities, nature trails, beaches, and open spaces, which make our community a more attractive and desirable place to live and to work and to play, as well as contributing to our ongoing economic vitality through the increased property values, increased tourism, and the attraction of visitors and recreational events. And whereas Indian River County Recreation Department provides a variety of recreation programs, including water safety, swimming lessons, baseball, softball, football, cheerleading, summer camps, and special events. And whereas Parks and Recreation agencies as a whole touch the lives of individuals, families, groups, and the community, and creating a positive impact through connecting people, protecting the environment, and reducing crime, and providing healthy recreational activities. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the Board designates July as Parks and Recreation Month and encourages all citizens to celebrate by participating in the diverse activities offered through the many facilities and places provided in the residents and visitors by the way of Indian River County Recreation Department, Indian River County Shooting Range, Sand Ridge Golf Course, Gifford Aquatic Center, North County Aquatic Center, and any of the Indian River County parks and conservation areas open to the public. Duly adopted this 12th day of July 2016, signed by all 5 county commissioners. Good morning, team.
Thank you, Commissioner Fleischer. I just wanted to select a cross-section of 3 of our most outstanding employees. Of course,
Did it.
Scott is on the recreation coordination side, and Lorenzo has the privilege of maintaining our parks as a foreman. Lorenzo Jefferson, and Beth Powell is in charge of our conservation lands program, which you all have made a tremendous commitment to, and we thank you for that. We've seen some projects coming out of the ground this year, but can I ask you to say hello to the commission? Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we just as grateful. It's myself, the Parks Division, as well as be grateful to the commissioner, as well as the administrator, and also to Mike Zito and David Fleetwood to entrust us, and we blessed to have a job. So once again, it's a team effort, and glad to be a part of the team. Thank you.
Great.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Davis.
You know, the Chamber of Commerce had some people in from the up northeast. They flew in on the airline on Elite, and they had the opportunity to live like we do for a couple days. And it's neat to read I guess it's a blog they do, and people have shared it on Facebook from the airboat rides and that kind of stuff. And so whenever you read that and you think, this is in our backyard, and then they come down here and they have such a phenomenal time that they use it to promote their tourism business, to sell packages and trips down here to enjoy our amenities. And all that would be simply spoiled if it wasn't for the work that all of y'all do in our Parks and Recreation Division. Good job.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Davis, it's funny, 32963 neglected to mention all that ecotourism promotion we're doing in their article, but
Well, I'm running for
that's
office
kind of
right now, so
expected,
I
I
learned not
guess.
to fight the newspaper.
No, another gem I always love to talk about, and this time of year it's really appropriate, is North County Pool. My wife Susan currently has 4 young nephews in town for the week for Camp Susan, as we call it, and they were up at the county pool yesterday. The good news is, 2 years ago we put some shade up there. Then last year we had some budget money to put more shade up, and so she said the new shade is fantastic. It's great. Unfortunately, by the time she got there, all the tables were taken. So I don't know. they need to get an earlier start. But they had a great time. The kids are 6 to 10 years old. They're in the splash pool. They're going on the slide. They're swimming laps. They're jumping off the high dive. Just having a grand old time. So another real gem. very affordable for a family to go to, very inexpensive to get in, and just a great facility. So y'all keep up the great work. You're really doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back to the middle for a photo. Is it really? Oh, was it? No.
I'm in my white.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kids hit that with my brother. I went back at 7:30.
Gotta dress up like a cow?
Or wear some kind of cow paraphernalia.
Scheduled next up is a presentation on Zika virus, but as we noted at the beginning, Mr. Carlson for that presentation will not be able to arrive till 11, so we'll work him in after he arrives. So we'll move to item D, which is a presentation on emergency preparedness by Susan Meal. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Good morning. Thank you so much for fitting me in. I was here till mid-afternoon a couple of meetings ago, and you were still going on, and I decided to have dinner.
Susan, believe us, a lot of us wish we could have left with you as well, but chairman made us stay. I don't know.
Well, those were great presentations, and now I have to put on the hat of fearmonger again once more, so I'm sorry about that, but somebody has to do it. Over the past few months, a number of major issues have arisen about the rail expansion. And I wanted to review some of those with you today and ask for your assistance in addressing these problems. And first, I'd like you to see an investigative report that was done by Channel 9 out of Orlando just last week. There's probably an ad. Oh, there isn't. You got to take it off.
Chemicals just feet away from homes and businesses. The commuter rail project that was sold to Central Florida as a way to get people from Orlando to Miami has an explosive secret.
Investigative reporter Christopher Heath poured through hundreds of pages of federal records to uncover the rail line that's been built as a high-speed commuter project is now planning to transport something entirely different.
Whisking passengers from Orlando to Miami and back again, all on high-speed rail. You've heard of All Aboard Florida and its plans for rail service. What you haven't heard is that the parent company, Florida East Coast Rail, has other plans for those tracks, namely transporting highly explosive liquefied natural gas.
There's a possibility that we may be moving in the foreseeable future.
Titusville resident Connie Ward has lived here for 7 years. Her home is less than 3 miles from where Florida East Coast Industries has plans for a liquefied natural gas plant.
We don't need an evacuation plan. If that thing starts to go up, all we needed was put her between our legs and kiss our rear ends goodbye.
Right now, America has an abundance of natural gas. Domestically, it's transported through pipelines. But if you want to ship it, say out of Jacksonville, Canaveral, or Miami, you need to liquefy it. Then, moving it from plant to port, that's where the rail comes in. The same rail All Aboard Florida plans to use for its high-speed commuter service. Rail that cuts right through highly populated cities and counties along Florida's Atlantic coast. The problem of proximity and population is perhaps most acute here in Stewart and Martin County, where the tracks that Florida East Coast will use run right through downtown.
So that's a real concern of ours. We don't believe there's enough regulations in place.
Brent Hanlon is with one of the citizen groups opposed to the rail, but he isn't alone in his concern. Martin County's fire department issued this report showing a possible blast radius impacting 1,200 residents, saying such an accident would exceed local response capabilities. Christopher Heath, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
We reached out to All Aboard Florida today, but we're told to contact Florida East Coast Railway. We contacted Florida East Coast Rail, but our emails have not been returned. The Federal Railroad Administration confirmed the application is still pending.
So here we are. As you know, we've talked about this issue in the past, and we're glad to see that others are starting to talk about it more and more. Adding LNG to the current list of hazardous materials carried through our counties is going to be disastrous. And as we know, Fortress Investment Group has many companies related to energy. Not just Florida East Coast Rail and All Aboard Florida, but also here in Florida, they have Parallel Infrastructure, LNG Holdings, American LNG Marketing, Tyco Development Partners, and Fortress New Energy, which, by the way, is the organization that has contracted with the island of Jamaica to provide it LNG produced here in Florida. The companies plan to produce the LNG, and now that the Panama Canal has been widened, LNG vessels can now pass through on their way to Asia and the Far East, which Fortress believes is a multi-billion-dollar market for them, and that's $1 billion annually. We know this to be a fact because Fortress companies have already received approval from the Department of Energy to export LNG from the ports in Florida. Since we determined this Fortress scheme, we've also been here to report on a number of other concerns regarding LNG through the communities. Not the least is the proximity of the Fort Pierce nuclear power plant within 2 miles of the tracks carrying hazardous materials. We believe this is a highly dangerous situation, but the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has blown off 2 letters outlining this issue and said there's no problem here, move along. We don't believe this is the case. So today we sent a letter of a FOIA document request to St. Lucie County, checking to see and asking to see all of the documents they've received in the last year that would indicate that there has been some type of simulation of issues involving hazardous materials, the nuclear power plant, and passengers all on the rail. It's important that we find out if people really are simulating the situation where trains may block roads in evacuation time. However, we've also communicated to all 3 commissions our latest concern, which is what I was here to talk to you about the last time, and that is that with 50 trains a day crossing 100 grade crossings minimum in the 3 counties of the Treasure Coast, that's 5,000 opportunities daily for a massive explosion when somebody parks a truck full of explosives on the track and makes it into a weapon of mass destruction if that's an LNG train that's derailed and then breaches. We found out all too sadly that there are people within miles of our community that have ill intent. So we've heard, the other thing I wanted to say, tell you about is that regarding St. Lucie County, Fire Chief Buddy Emerson sent a letter to the Assistant Vice President of Operating Policy and Procedures for Florida East Coast Rail in January. He said, as proud as I am of our organization, our firefighters and their capabilities to handle the vast majority of emergencies that occur in St. Lucie County, I must admit that we have concerns regarding the increased use and transportation of LNG by rail, the increased freight traffic containing all kinds of hazards in volumes we may not be accustomed to, and passenger traffic along the FEC rail. It troubles me to say it, but we are simply not adequately prepared for these changes. He goes on to list a number of areas where they need assistance, and somebody needs to be looking into this preparation, and somebody needs to be paying for it. These include a centralized fire EMS station in a location capable of housing combined special operations and hazmat response teams, operations training, passenger service familiarization and training, and the list goes on. I have copies for each one of you of those letters. We haven't heard a lot from this county's emergency management division. I hasten to say that it may be outlined their responses in the EIS, which I haven't looked at recently, but it's imperative that the rail expansion be taken in its entirety, including the ramifications of passenger trains being on the tracks at the time of an explosion and the safety of the passengers on those trains as well as our residents. we would like to have you consider bringing our concerns to FEMA and the state's Department of Emergency Services and asking them what they're intending to do about it in their function as oversight of these issues. We would like to see county staff and experts address this massive change in the operation on the rails. We're happy that our county doesn't have a nuclear power plant or the plans for an LNG plant, but we're by no means out of the woods here because these trains will be coming through here, and as we said, 50 times a day, that's 32 passenger and over 20 potential hazmat trains. We need to calculate the costs of repairing and the costs of recovering from a disaster. That second part is just as important as the first. And because I'm mentioning costs, I'd just like to mention on a side note that there are a number of people going around this county talking about the fact that using taxpayer dollars to fund a legal fight to stop this disaster from happening is not right. They think we have better things to do with our money. I suggest that now more than ever, I believe that between the taxpayer monies that will be poured into every aspect of this expansion and the threat of disaster, if we can stop the trains, there will be a net gain that we won't even be able to measure. And I think if we look at the location of just one school, Gifford Middle School, and its proximity to the tracks, we need to think about all of the people in this community, the neighborhoods, the businesses, and realize that we have to do everything we can to stop the trains. And so I thank you for all you've done so far, and we hope that you will look into these emergency preparedness issues, and we'll hear from you later.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Thank
Neal.
you.
Thank you.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for all the work that you and some of your associates have done on this. It's been tremendous and added tremendously to the fight against all aboard Florida. I'd like to follow up also on your idea that it's much cheaper to fight this project now than live with it later. And I'll just note, even if we should lose, which I don't think we will, the improved safety that's come out because of our efforts, your efforts and the efforts of grassroots groups, which has caused the FRA to seriously look at the crossing designs, has already probably added more value than we've spent fighting this. I mean, each of our 32 crossings in Indian River County is going to be much, much safer because AAF's feet are being held to the fire, and they're not going to be able to shortchange the safety at those crossings. And I think if we continue the way we are, we're going to get more than the crossings a lot safer. We'll get some safety procedures done all the way up and down the line. So that'll be crucial. So thank you very much for your efforts, and I hope you'll continue them.
Thank you.
I do have one question. Part of this exercise would be similar to what we went through with the new Florida Power and Light power plant in Okeechobee, where we bargained out an emergency services compensation plan for training and for ongoing response. I don't know how detailed it would be to try to come up with an action plan. What would the plan cost? So at some point in their permitting, as it did with Florida Power and Light, they had to ask for permission. We can say, if the feds are going to say it's coming, but you have to meet some local requirements, I'd like to know a price tag that they have to pay as permitting the power plant went through. I think my guess is it would be time consuming, but not. I think knowing the number would have significant value to know what it would cost to staff up apparatus, manpower, training, and I don't know if we'd want to. I don't know where they're at in the process exactly to know when we would need that, but I think it might take us better part of a month or longer to put that number together if you felt, as I do, that I think it would be important to have that number.
I think that'd probably be reasonable, and maybe that there's work done in some other communities that would give us a head start.
I would think so.
I think it'd probably be, we'll see what the rest of the board, if the consensus of the board to ask the fire chief to or Emergency Services Director to take a look at this and try to come up with at least the preliminary estimates.
And in addition to that, I'll go ahead and probably formulate an email and put in the bullets that she asked us to look into and send it back to her to see to it that we're all on the same page with that, and then probably send that out to the departments that should be looking into those those probably going to be all out of John King's office, but.
I don't know if you've seen this letter, but it does outline in some detail what they.
If you could go back to that.
They can't hear you on TV land.
What they have determined, some of the things, and he says this is not all inclusive, some of the things that need to be addressed. I think it would be great to start out by just finding out, are there regulations that somebody at a higher level is going to demand that somebody do? And that's one start. And also, we did a little of what you're suggesting earlier on by meeting with some of the fire safety people, and they were collecting information from around the country in terms of equipment for cutting open passenger cars, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure that you can find that information.
And well, to address one of your points about getting the higher level agencies involved, the FRA does seem to be engaged now in this. Unfortunately, it does not seem yet that the Florida Department of Transportation has been engaged. Our legal department has been trying to get them engaged, and I think that's one of the type of things that this board may try to do in the next legislative session, to work with our legislators to try to get them engaged. One of the things I found to be particularly disconcerting and puzzling is the fact that the Florida Department of Transportation, even though this is a key transportation issue on the east coast of Florida, has been entirely absent. So that's something which we will continue to push.
Right, and the statutes for Florida say that they should be the ones that in many ways have the last say.
That's my understanding, but it doesn't seem to be the case so far. So,
And you started this out by saying about fear mongering. This isn't fear mongering. This is we see evidence of this, throughout the nation, of cars exploding from wrecks and that kind of stuff. And so this is, I say it's fact checking and
Sadly enough, it
and
is,
being prepared just in case.
To the board, and as opposed to just simply a motion or direction, I'll at least say today, and one of the issues that we've been trying to balance in our office is working with the other communities and working with the citizen groups. And sometimes that has meant, and this is an admission on my part, sometimes that meant that I felt that we had to focus on certain issues, knowing that other groups were focused on other issues, so they we weren't consistently doubling up on the same issue. And I know that Susan's group has been really focused on this. I know there's been other groups have been doing some work. So we've been trying to focus more of some of our other efforts on some of the other issues that we knew were pending about the train. If the board would like, I'd be certainly happy to work with John King and work with Susan Meehill and her group a little bit closer on this issue. And again, that was...
this was no criticism of yours. We understand that. But this is not your issue. This is emergency services issue. So I don't see this as something that would take or should take up much of your time at all. This is, we have, my understanding is Martin County has done more in emergency services than we have, but they've got a body of knowledge now. St. Lucie County has been dealing some degree with the nuclear power plant, so they have a body of knowledge now. This is now, I think it's time for our EMS system to actually take a harder look at this and try to get the first round estimates of what the costs for this are going to be. It's not a legal issue. It's a practicality issue of what is our emergency services district going to have to do to protect the citizens of Indian River County should this train come by with things like liquefied natural gas.
And as we always say, there's safety in numbers, so the more people speaking out, the more counties, obviously, as you know, the better. So
now, if you want to do something on this, I think it's probably appropriate for us to join with others to send a letter to FEMA to ask what their plans for this are, and if they've been engaged and have any information. But that would be something which I don't think would take up too much of your time, but that would add to the voice of concern for this.
We'd be happy to work on that.
thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you very much for your
And
presentation.
thank you for putting me on so early.
Made up for the last.
Yeah, it makes up for the last time.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you noticed that the name of the reporter, Christopher Heath, was also the one that did the very good in-depth reporting on the FMPA investigation. And I spoke with Chris before the video came out, and they're not done with this story. They are very frustrated with the runaround of being told, call Fortress. Fortress says call All Aboard. All Aboard says call the FEC. They now see what we've been dealing with for a long time, and he has, I think, more segments on this to come in the future.
That ought to be good. We'll move to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 7th. Any changes, additions, deletions to the minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fleischer, seconded by Commissioner Davis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you. Information items, anybody wish to pull one for discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item A, the update on the sea turtle nesting. I think staff has a presentation. And while they're coming up for that, under item B, a couple of events. We have the ribbon cutting ceremony for the intergenerational facility on August 17th, so save the date. And then the Special Olympics are having a meet at the North County Pool, August 20th through the 21st, and they are looking for volunteers for the Special Olympics. And with that, James?
Yes, good morning. For the record, County Coastal Engineer James Gray. In 2004, the county implemented a habitat conservation plan for the protection of sea turtles. A large component of the habitat conservation plan is monitoring the countywide nesting frequency along our shoreline. 2016 represents the 12th year of this monitoring under the habitat conservation plan. Kendra Cope, our environmental specialist, and also HCP Habitat Conservation Plan coordinator, will be giving a short presentation on our nesting season update for 2016.
Thank you, and for the record, Kendra Cope, the Coastal Environmental Specialist under the Public Works Department for Indian River County. As James said, we do have a long-term or a long-standing sea turtle monitoring program guided by the HCP. And that's because we have three major nesting species of sea turtles here in Indian River County, including our leatherbacks, which are considered endangered, our green turtles, which have recently just been downlisted to threatened due to conservation efforts. We're seeing a growth in their population, or at least their nesting numbers, and then also our most common species, which is our loggerhead. And we gather these data about these nesting species through daily nesting surveys. We have 3 permit holders across the county, which have teams of surveyors which go out every morning on an ATV and collect data on every single time a turtle touches our beach. We find out if they nested or not, what species they are, and any sort of impacts they may have encountered during the nesting process or the hatching process later on in the season. So I'm just going to go through some nesting numbers to give everyone an update on how the season is going. I do want to note that these numbers are slightly updated from the memorandum that was sent out last week to better represent what is going on in the county as of now. So these numbers are updated to, as of last week, July 7th. And so on this figure, we're going to do leatherbacks first, looking at long-term nesting trends. And 2010 was the record nesting year for leatherbacks. They have normally seen a biannual nesting pattern, as you can see from this up and down pattern. It does look like we're on a slippery slope, but these turtles take 15 to 25 years to mature, so we need a much larger outlook to know, or time span to know what's really going on. This could actually just be part of a natural cycle. So nothing can be firm or said as of now. But I did want to let you know, as of the 7th of July, which is probably the very end of the leatherback nesting, in 2016, there was 34 nests this year across the county. For green turtles, the nesting season just started for them, and they also have that biannual nesting pattern. And as you can see in the past few years, we've had 2 very large record peaks. Last year was our peak season, and a record year of 5,187 nests across the county. So it's an expected, what we call low year this year. We were not expecting very many, and as we can see, we're not getting very many, which is what we would call normal. So we have 60 nests as of the 7th of July this year. But what I really wanted to touch on this year was the story of the loggerhead, which is our most common nesting sea turtle in Indian River County. In 2012, we had a record year with 6,643 nests. And as of July 7th, we are already at 5,228, and we're only halfway through the nesting season. That being the case, we're suspecting statewide that this might be a record loggerhead nesting year. And this is kind of evident if we look at the southern portion of Indian River County, which is monitored by the Indian River Sea Turtle Program team, guided by myself, the permit holder for that area. In 2012, as of July 7th, we had 1,548 nests, and this year we've already surpassed that number by this year. By this time, on July 7th of 2016, we had 1,959 nests. So these numbers are very promising, and nothing can be said yet because the nesting season is not over. However, it looks like we are having a very wonderful and busy year related to loggerhead nesting. So many of you may have seen on the beach, we have a lot more marked nests. And please note that we only mark every 15th nest in the southern Indian River County region of the county. But beyond that, I wanted to introduce a new educational program that has started this year. And this is the Turtle Dig, which is an educational opportunity for guests to view the Indian River Sea Turtle Program excavate and evaluate the nest after they've hatched. This is a very common practice to collect success rate data on our nests. We need to know how well they are doing. But now this is going to be open for the public in a specific area of Indian River County, right at the beachfront area of the city of Vero Beach, right at the Sexton Plaza beach access. We have specific nests marked for these educational programs, which include a presentation about sea turtle life history, any sort of impacts to their survival, and ways to improve conservation for our sea turtles in Indian River County, and then also allows guests to ask questions and get up close and personal and be more involved with that reproductive success process. We've had 2 so far, last Friday and also last Sunday. And some of those, these programs start at 8 o'clock and last almost an hour. And here's some of the pictures from the most recent turtle digs. We have a presentational tent set up right at the beach access with all sorts of information about our loggerheads and green turtle nesting in the county, as well as you can see nest contents are not affected at this point. They've already hatched, and so we can pass around and show the guests what do these eggs look like if they haven't hatched. And so and they can watch the whole process, watch the data collection, as you can see in that lower left-hand corner. And then every so often, we get to find what we call a straggler hatchling. And that is a hatchling that wouldn't have made it out of that nest on its own because its brothers and sisters decided to use it as an elevator as they just came out of the sand. And so we get to take those hatchlings and then release them for the public at that time after the presentation has already been complete. Overall, since we've had about 70 people attend those 2 events, and we have many more planned for the rest of the summer. They will happen 3 days after the nest hatches, so that the date of these events is to be determined based on when the nest hatched, but they will all be posted on our Facebook page, IRC Coastal, and then also on our website, the Coastal Engineering Division's website for Indian River County. And as of that is the updates of our sea turtle program for now.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Fletcher.
And I did stop by this week to thank you. It was well warranted. We hear a lot about your endeavors out there at the beach sites, at all the turtle nesting sites, the tours. And, you know, if you want to just look back, maybe the numbers were a little different, but when people would see the turtle nesting sites, they would say, don't go near them, you get arrested. Now, there appears to be an understanding, a commitment from the community that that is a reserved area and they're treated with total respect. And in a recent tour of the beach, I saw them, they're just growing, and there's more and more sites. I want to thank you for your awareness. Not that we did not have awareness before, but you've raised the bar so much so that you're going to be directly associated with these numbers. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner.
No, that's great. That's
Thank-
a wonderful
Yeah.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
Keep up all the great efforts.
Thanks.
We'll now move to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, I'd like to pull 8V and 8W. Anybody else care to pull anything?
V as in Victor.
That was one of the ones I pulled, V as in Victor.
Item D, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anything else? I'll ask if there's anybody in the public who'd like to pull any item for discussion. Mr. Johnson, if you'd come up and tell us which item will. Name and address for the record, please.
Bob Johnson, Corwin subdivision. Item M.
And Mike?
Okay, and why don't you just stay there? Since you're there, we'll start with item M.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move as amended, approval as amended.
Second. We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, seconded by Commissioner Zork to move as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Mr. Johnson?
Item M is a item that asks for reimbursement from the Inland Water Management District for funding to help provide certain work to be done in the county, Round Island. One of the items, $188,000, is not identified as being funded by the Inland Water Management District, or the Navigational District. Was that in the budget to be funded this year? What is the difference between Round Island upgrade and the Oslo boat ramp? Thank you.
Yeah,
Just-
Mr. Chair.
Bob, I can tell you, as far as what fund is funding, they generally will only fund items that are specifically waterway related. And so in this case, it's an observation boardwalk that's out in the water, so they can fund that. The other improvements are some of the parking lot and trailer parking areas that traditionally doesn't fund that aspect of a project, and the local government will fund that part. And it's a good partnership. We all pay in our property taxes a certain amount to the Inland Navigation District, and this is just returning some of those dollars back to the county for these waterway-related improvements. As far as comparing to the Oslo boat ramp, the big difference is this is all existing infrastructure that's in place. So we're not putting in any new infrastructure. We're just repaving the parking lot, replacing some of the boardwalk that's worn out from the years. And so this is more of a replacement project. And the Oslo boat ramp had a lot more of new infrastructure going in. So that's the biggest difference between the two.
The $188,000, is that in the current budget to be funded, or is that to be funded through contingency? In other words, we're still in the existing fiscal year.
So we'll ask Mr. Brown.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that is budgeted in the current year with a mixture of Florida boating improvement funds and gas taxes. Of the folks, when you have a boat registration fee, a portion of that comes back to the county for boating improvements, so that is funding a portion of it, and we're using some gas taxes for the parking lot and drive area. So those items are budgeted in the current fiscal year to match the fine grant.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move approval of item M.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Commissioner O'Brien, item D.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the county's holiday schedule, and for the first time in the 10 years I've been sitting up here, that we have now formally added the Martin Luther King Jr. Day as an official county holiday. And I just think, given all that's going on, this is very appropriate, and I'm very pleased that the board stepped up and took the action to recognize this very, very important holiday. So with that, move approval of item D.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Zork. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. I pulled item 8W, and basically the only reason I pulled this is because it was added as an emergency item, so people wouldn't have had a chance to see what it is. My understanding is this is an item, a miscellaneous budget amendment in the amount of $50,000 to pay for the engine, one of the engines on a fire rescue boat. This item was budgeted in the next fiscal year, but because of the shape of the engine, it's basically been asked by the emergency services to move up a year. And there's no other questions, or
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Davis?
I appreciate you pulling that, and I think that it's not good policy whenever you do a budget amendment that's not been advertised. So just hoping everybody understands, and in an effort to be as transparent as possible. Clearly, we didn't know that the motors were going to blow. This is something that needs to be taken care of for public safety. And normally I wouldn't support a budget amendment without it being properly advertised, but in this instance I will, because of the transparency that we're going through right now with it, as well as I have a boat, and so I know when the motors, when they blow, they just blow.
And I'll be happy to second your motion. Any other questions or concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. The next item is item EV, and I'm going to turn this one over to Mr. Bowling. And I want to, this is basically my understanding on the agenda because it deals with a development in the community, but the developer was facing the long gap between meetings, and it was his desire not to have to wait a long time before meetings, and I think that's basically a reasonable thing and consistent with the board's overall view of trying to move economic development items forward as fast as possible and not for us to be the cause of the delay. One of the things we can't see is all the sort of background activity that's been taking place in the last week, especially with our staff, the Community Development Office and the Attorney's Office. And I'd like to thank both offices for all that you've done to bring us up to this point. So I'll turn the floor over to you, Mr. Bowling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Stan Bowling, County Community Development Director. This is regarding consent agenda item 8V as in Victor for the final plat for Harmony Reserve. And as the chairman said, normally we would have everything wrapped up and in the packet. This is a consent item, but in this case, we've had a couple of additional items and we have an amended recommendation. I passed it out on the dais here under 8V with essentially 4 items for the board to consider in its motion. And again, the reason that we wanted to pull it and try to accommodate this was because of the 4-week recess in the board meeting, so the project can move forward. I'll summarize these and then turn it over to the county attorney. And you know, again, the county surveyor did a lot of work on this, and utilities, and the applicant as well. So are able to, at the end of this recommendation, be in a position for everything to move forward. The first item is to grant approval of the revised final plat, and the county attorney will go over that. Some revised pages were needed to be done between the time you got your packet and this morning. Also, item number 2, approve a county deed for the northern section of 59th Avenue, and that's subject to some changes that the county surveyor has identified and the applicant and all staff are comfortable with. Item 3 is to accept the easement from the developer, Harmony Reserve LLC, for utilities that are located outside the boundary of Phase 1B. And again, that's going to be subject to a legal description that will be reviewed and approved by the county surveyor shortly. And item 4 is to accept the bill of sale, subject to a legal description, reviewed and approved by the county surveyor. If you all vote this motion, that'll put staff in the position to finalize all the documents, have the final plat recorded, and the project can move forward. Turn it over to the county attorney.
Thank you very much. Just in an attempt to be as transparent as possible during this process, as Stan has identified, we certainly support the 4 recommendations presented to the board today. I just want to be very clear. We have all the information and documents relative to the plat, which is item number 1, and the county deed. I just want to explain items 3 and 4. Essentially, and I have the documents also that I'm going to be discussing that have been handed out to the commissioners, to Jason, to the developer, to Stan, and to the clerk. So the bill of sale that is referenced in the conditions, those will actually exist on what will be the Pinner parcel. If you look at sheet 8 of 8 in your packet that I've handed out, On the top or on the right side, you will see an informational item, and there's a property that extends from 37th Street all the way down to a box labeled not included south 1/2 of Lot 4, Albright Acres. So that section here, which will now through the deed approved by the Board of County Commissioners last week and today, that will be the section of which the bill of sale coming to the county will be, and we wanted the board to approve and accept those. The bill of sale will be coming from Harmony Reserve and the Pinner folks who own that piece, will be owning that piece of property. The second section, which is the easement referenced in item number 3, is actually a small strip of property located just between that portion and the extent of the actual plat. So there's sort of a gap between the Pinner portion and the plat, and thus we wanted Harmony Reserve to present us with an easement over those properties, which will essentially give us the right to access those utilities between now and whenever this portion gets platted. So you have the grant of the plat, you have the county deed, you have the easement, and you have the bill of sale. I just want to walk through the additional issues that exist outside the plat, which are necessary in order for the plat to be in proper order. In addition to what Commissioner Solari said and Stan said, I would specifically just like to thank Nancy, who worked extremely hard in the last couple days making sure the plat was reviewed, several revisions, making sure the letter of credit was in order, making sure the construction contract was in order, and the various easements and bills of sale. And she just did an amazing job in the last week to make sure this was all in the proper position to move forward today. And I also want to thank John and Stan and also the Vinny and Jesse Rowland as well in utilities, who were also very instrumental in making sure that the utility issues were addressed, and also David Scriber, our county surveyor. And thank you very much.
If I could, just to see if I got everything right, on items 3 and 4, basically all the substantive portions have been done, but there's still some sort of legal tying together to be done?
Yes, we just want to make sure that the legal descriptions were reviewed and approved by the county surveyor. We were otherwise good to go.
So if we approve the items subject to legal's acceptance of legal sufficiency of the documents, that would?
Yeah, either as presented by staff or that will be fine as well.
Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher. I'll be happy to second it. I'll ask if anybody has any comments from the audience first.
Dylan, this won't create a hiatus, will it?
You just wanted to say that. You just wanted to say that word, didn't you?
I researched it up. You know what it means? It means to yawn or to gape.
Yeah?
Yep.
Well, we'll go back to Mr. Johnson.
Corwin subdivision. This is a planned development. This isn't just a regular, normal, and the question is, how come this wasn't described and brought up at the time of the planning and zoning when this, I mean, this is, a PD is a big deal in the county. In other words, it's not just a rubber stamp or a whatever, but it's a big deal. And it's interesting that all these discussions that we have, this wasn't brought out at the planning and zoning when this was originally approved as part of the total package for approval. Now we're making exceptions, it seems like, to the existing approval of the PD, which should have been approved at the time of the planning and zoning.
I don't see this as any exceptions to the PD in any way, but during the course of a development, you do things like different surveys, come across different little technical issues that crop up that then need to be properly described in legal documents. These are, for the most part, things that you wouldn't even know about prior to actually starting the project. But as you go through the project, the items come up, they have to be dealt with in a legally sufficient manner. So basically, most of this is simply, in my view, housekeeping items to make sure that 20 or 30 years from now, if something pops up, we have the details in place to address the issue then.
Easement isn't a housekeeping task. Easement's a big deal when it comes to the person that's
Bob, if I may, I look at development world, and there's sort of 3 separate phases. I'm sure there are other little divisions you could make. You have the comprehensive plan, which is a very broad 30,000-foot level document, which has very broad discussions about policies. You then move down to zoning that gets a little bit more specific regarding what you can do with a piece of property and the requirements. And then as you go through zoning, you then get to the little nitty-gritty details, which is really what the plat process is about in terms of lining up little little areas. And so this is really just a subset of those larger two issues, the land use and the zoning. So this isn't unusual that these types of issues would come out at a plat approval stage or a final development order stage versus a PD stage.
Well, a PD is, like I mentioned before, is a big deal, and it should have been brought up, as far as I can see, at the time of the original development, successfully the easement and so forth. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns from the audience? Mr.
If
Mecklin.
I could, Chuck Mecklin with the Harmony Reserve Project, so that Bob knows.
Address, please, for the record.
33rd Street.
Thank you.
As Bob knows, or at the planning process, this was brought up. What we're actually doing today is just the legalities of these easements and the finalization of their documentation. So it was discussed at planning and zoning, it was approved at planning and zoning, it was brought up at county commission as the process was being approved, and it's just like earlier said, cleanup of those issues and the finalization of the plat process. And I just want to take a moment to thank staff as well. It's wonderful to work with in this, and like Mr. Reingold had said, that Nancy in their office was just spectacular to interact and to push things along, and I appreciate everybody, all the department heads in this process as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments questions from the audience? We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher, which I seconded. Any other questions from commissioners? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Matter passes 5-0. Thank you very much. We will now move on to item 10, public hearings. 2nd Street petition millings project, 35th Avenue and 32nd Avenue. This is actually the cancellation of the project. Good morning, Rich. Name and address for the record, please.
Rich Berka, Public Works Director in Indian River County. Representatives of the Emerson Park subdivision presented to the county a petition to install millings on a portion of 2nd Street between 35th Avenue and 32nd Avenue. Back in May 2016, the commission adopted 2 resolutions, one for the placement of the millings and the second to set a public hearing for June 7th. At the public hearing, one of the petitioners stated that he was no longer in favor of the project, and the second petitioner, through his attorney, said that he wasn't properly noticed on the project. As such, the board directed staff to send new letters for support or denial of the project to each of the people, along with the actual cost of the project. And the board tabled the public hearing till July 12th. Per the board's direction, we sent the letters out and asked that they be returned to us by June 28th. We had 15 property owners respond. 9 were in favor and 6 were not in favor. Since that time, we've received 1 more property owner response in favor of the project, which increases the number of people in favor of the project to 10. Still have 6 not in favor, and we still have 4 that have not returned their responses. Based on what we've received through, including the one we received after the memo was written, there's only 38% based on square footage in favor of the project. So based on that information, we recommend that the chairman sign a resolution effectively rescinding resolution 216-041 and resolution 216-042 and canceling the proposed millings project.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Spierka? Anybody in the audience wish to comment on this?
Actually, to the chair, we actually had a public hearing scheduled today, so we probably should at least appropriately open that public hearing.
Open the public hearing and ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this millings item? There being no one, we will close the public hearing.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Davis for staff recommendation. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Rich, thank you very much for your work. And I just want to point out, to me, this is one of the great things about sometimes when government works slowly. I mean, some things sound good at start before all the information comes out, but This is one where the process tried to fill the sort of needs and desires of the neighborhood. You and your staff did a great job in trying to get that information out, and at the end of the day, they turned it down. But I think that your efforts and the efforts of your department were well received by everybody, and I certainly appreciate that. And I wouldn't take the millions rejection as a rejection of you. I mean, I think this is a good part of the process and ought to be considered as such. So thank you and your department very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'd like to move now to Office of Management and Budget, email addresses and contact information published on county website. Good morning. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning. For the record, Michael Smykowski, Indian River County Budget Director. This agenda item today was prepared in response to Commissioner Zork's initial inquiry and the board direction on June the 14th, 2016, to explore publishing email addresses on the county website. The standard practice of the Computer Services Division is to avoid publishing email addresses on the county website to limit spam email on the county network. And just to give you an idea, the last time the IT staff evaluated how much spam email we get on a daily basis, they came up with approximately 10,000 items per day in the current configuration without publishing web addresses. So that is obviously a concern, and certainly worth noting here during this process as we consider adding email addresses. Obviously, spammers also use programs called email harvesters. They just go out and try to find readily available email addresses that are published. To the extent possible to minimize that, we currently use flat images rather than the link to minimize the potential intrusion for spammers and or hackers who might obviously send emails that look legitimate, and then when clicked upon, it can introduce a virus into the county computer network. The current practice, again, is to publish masked email addresses or images for the board and the administration department. And there's a staff phone directory at the top of each web page. In addition, as noted in the agenda item, the Utilities and Emergency Services Division has specifically requested limiting contact information so that customer inquiries get routed properly through the appropriate channels through their customer service network. In terms of options considered, there were 4. The status quo, adding top-level staff masked emails to the main department web pages was number 2. Adding masked email addresses next to each employee's phone number on the main phone directory. And the 4th option is to change from a phone directory list to a page listing the department main phone number and a link that would provide a mechanism to email the department. It would be in the form of a secure contact form validating that a real person is in fact filling out the request rather than just one of these spamming type email harvester programs. This option was the recommended option as it strikes a balance between the transparency and customer service and network security. Obviously, again, with 10,000 emails, spam emails per day currently, obviously we want to evolve toward more transparency, but also strive to achieve that healthy balance between network security. So we think this is the appropriate step. And the IT staff did the heavy lifting on this one. I want to thank them for their efforts. And they're also here if there are any technical questions relative to emailing the email address issue.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
I have one under item 4. You said that was the staff's recommended keep just the commissioner and administration masked emails published as is. The history of where this came from, I was at a place using not my normal county access computer on a weekend I wanted to send a code enforcement note to one of the inspectors, and I went to the website and I'm thinking somehow I should be able to find an email to send them a note, but as it turned out, that wasn't possible. So that's kind of where this derived from, and if I can't find it, the public can't surely find it. So it's a way to give a resource tool. And I know sometimes if somebody sends an email to a staff person directly, that may not be the right staff person to address a problem. But having some way that people can send, whether it's a complaint, a question, or something, and find the email address to send it, I don't anticipate that being a huge problem, but I'm sure that is something that has to be considered. So just a way to broaden the public access of email listings, directory. But again, if we're already getting 10,000 a day, and somehow we're catching them, which is great, because I know what it's like when, you know, when your regular email, your non-county email, all the stuff that you get, and just amazing how much stuff you get that you don't want. So I do like it that we don't get the junk email. Do you know what the school board uses? Because I've actually initially, I emailed the school board member, and then my email was bounced back because I was not an approved email sender to the school board. So I couldn't send a county email to a county school board department. So I don't know how that, they finally got it fixed.
Government at its best there.
The school board uses
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Basil Dancy, Computer Services Manager for Indian River County. The school board uses a special product.
Lightspeed.
Yeah, Lightspeed Network. The Lightspeed Network software is manufactured exclusively for school boards. Nobody else can buy it. It's a system that was developed for school boards because the school board system, in order for parents to be able to talk to the teachers, whatever, they have a completely open system. But in order to protect their security, a company developed a product that essentially does what we're trying to do. It requires a second level of authentication, a reply to an email generated from the Lightspeed software, so that you can prove that you are a real person, not a harvester or a web crawler that searches for email addresses. Since that product is built exclusively for school boards and school organizations, we are trying to find our own system of that, and our recommendation does some of the same things by publishing just department level email addresses. It can go to the department level and be directed to whichever staff person is responsible for that area. By building in an additional level of checking into that form itself can verify that it's a real person, not a harvester. We're essentially building our own form that does a similar process to what the Lightspeed software does.
Okay.
So it goes, as I understand it, goes in some direction where you want it to go, just not all the way because of the spam.
Right.
Well, yes, and from a staff standpoint, I can tell you that I sent an email to our school board from my personal email, and that Lightspeed system caught it up, and they sent the reply back. But I don't have as sophisticated a personal email as what we have here, and I discovered their email back to me in my own spam folder 3 days later saying I need to verify that. So 3 days later, I went and verified it, so my email was delayed 3 days. So I think the system that we have here would be better. It's doing the checking on the front end, and you're getting that email straight through. I think what we can do in certain areas like code enforcement, we can not just have it say community development department, because folks may not see that, but those common inquiries, what we've seen is, you know, would you like to contact code enforcement, then it would send them to the appropriate folks. And I think what it does by sending it to the right folks, that we can channel it and avoid that government runaround. What we hate to do is say, okay, you need to call this department, no, you need to call this department, you need to call this department. What we like to do is try and get them to where they need to go right away. So if we get it funneled, it's got the purpose of getting it to those departmental folks that know where it needs to go, so we can get them to the right person as quickly as possible.
And to follow up on that, actually, Commissioner Zork, you mentioned that option number 4, which was just keep the commissioner and administration massed emails published as is. I think actually when I look at the recommendation, they actually recommended approval of option 1, which was the first item in the options.
Okay.
Any other questions? Be happy to entertain a motion.
Staff recommendation for option 1.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner O'Brien, seconded by Commissioner Fleischer for option number 1. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
We move to Public Works, award of bid number 2016019, IRC Goal Line Transfer Hub, 16th Street. And Rich is back.
Back again.
Been a busy guy.
Rich Spirica, Public Works Director. This is in reference to the Indian River County Goal Line Transfer Hub. On April 14th, 2015, the board approved a design contract with Schilke, Biddle, and Stoddard to design the new transfer hub at 1235 16th Street. The project consists of 1,732 square feet of bathrooms and open waiting area, 3,400 square feet of pre-manufactured aluminum structures, 101.6 acres of site improvements, including parking, lighting, landscaping, stormwater, to accommodate the 8 bus routes. The project estimate was provided to the board on April 14th, and it was approximately $981,000. During the design process, issues were resolved, and that increased the engineer's cost estimate to $1,120,000. On June 8th, we had a bid opening. There were 2 bidders, and the bid opening, the low bidder was Barth Construction at $1,780,074. The second bidder was Bill Bryant at $2,185,122. Currently, the budget available for the project is $1,183,000, with it creating a shortfall of $597,000 to fund the project. Currently, Phil Mattson, the MPO director, is looking into talking to DOT, trying to procure some more funding for the project. We're hoping for a 50% match grant, or maybe more. We don't know at this time. Barth Construction is considered the low bidder, low responsible bidder at $1,780,074.06. Barth has done projects for the county and has performed in a satisfactory manner. In summary, due to the shortfall of the project, staff offers the following options to the board for consideration. Option 1, award the project to the low bidder and fully fund the project at $1,780,074.06 and provide additional funding in the amount of $597,073.56 from secondary road cash forward account. Option 2 is to delete item 16,000-2. This is for the exterior aluminum structures, covered walkways from the building to each of the bus route locations, including the bus bays, including shelters at the bus bays. This will save the county approximately $287,000 from the current low bidder. The footings and the walkways for the shelters cannot be installed at this time due to the fact that the project was bid, allowing the contractor the option of which shelters he wanted to use, so they could shop the materials and the structures themselves, so we could try to get a cost benefit out of that. So in summary on that, the current low bidder would retain the low bidding status, and the second bidder, of course, would retain his second low bid status. We can move forward if the board was to take this option. The project would still need an initial $310,073.56. Again, that is available in the secondary road cash forward account. The third option is to reject both bids, direct staff to analyze the current design, and come back to the board with anticipated cost savings for redesign of the project. Staff recommends option 1 to the board with the provision that a notice to proceed is not issued to the contractor until grant funding from DOT has been procured. And with options 1 and 2, staff recommends the board approve the attached agreement and authorize the chairman to sign after review and approval of the agreement and the public construction bond by the county attorney as to legal form, and after receipt and approval of the required insurance by the risk manager.
Rich, how much state money do we have already for this? Come on up.
Hi, Phil Mattson, Indian River County MPO. There's no state money in this. Well, there's a small state grant for design, $68,642. No state money. This was a federal grant we
How
got.
much federal money?
Yeah, 1.150 million in a discretionary grant that we competed for 2 years ago, and 104,000 that we anticipated for future, as of yet unidentified hub needs in our regular grants. So that's 1.150 and 104.
And I know this is a difficult one, but how realistic do you think is the chance to get the roughly $300,000 from FDOT?
I think we have an excellent chance. It's not confirmed yet, it's not official, but they told me they think we can get it done. You know, this is SOFA change to DOT. I mean, this is a very small amount to spend on an intermodal project when they're looking at a $1 billion hub in Miami-Dade and so forth. So,
thank you, and you do have a good record, I'll note. And if I could ask Jason, do we have the full $600,000 in secondary road cash forward if we need it?
We do have the entire funding available.
Okay. Just my own thought is I don't like option 2 at all, the idea of doing away with the shade for a number of reasons. I mean, our ridership is increasing tremendously, and I think all of us know what it's like to stand out in the heat in Florida during the summer, and the last couple of months have shown that.
The shade.
And I certainly don't want our citizens who are already taking their time traveling to have to spend that hour in the sun like that.
Yep,
So,
Mr. Chairman, I will concur with that, and I'll move option 1 to move forward with the project, but I would just go ahead and delete the caveat that we are wait for the DOT. I think one way or the other, we should build this as it's designed and build a first-class facility, and if we have to cover the full 600,000, then let's do it. But I don't want to hold this up any longer. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed. And so I'd just like to see us go ahead and move forward and start construction as soon as we can.
okay. Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Bryan, second from Commissioner Flesher.
Question.
How long will we, if we were to delay it for the FDOT?
yeah, that's the one thing I really can't promise you. The wheels of FDOT turn slowly. I can, if you wanted to put a time, you know, if we don't hear from them within a certain number of weeks, we go ahead with our money. That might be the best way to handle it. But Jason?
I think
First
it
Jason,
take-
then Commissioner.
It takes about a month or so to get the notice to proceed and all that paperwork done. So I think if we wait during that time, that if we get it by the next commission meeting, essentially, then we would hold off on the grant. If we don't do that, if we don't get the grant by then maybe we move the project forward so as not to delay it.
Commissioner.
I think we ought to ask the question before we make a decision on this. I'm still good, but so many of these projects, if you start before everything's proper, you don't get the funding.
No, that's the case
Yeah.
here for everything.
And we checked with DOT on that. Their take was you can let the contract, but don't start construction
Okay.
prior to us
So how-
getting you the JPA. So that was, we did double check that.
That's where I'd have to be.
And that's where I'd like to be, but if we could ask staff perhaps well, if the maker will amend the motion, if we can ask staff to bring this back up in the August meeting, simply to let us know exactly where we are, to ask staff to go ahead and get a little more detail from FDOT so they may be able to, by that time, firm us up on a date so we'll know.
Yeah, and at that time, hopefully I'll have the JPA in hand so we can formalize it.
So if that's,
Yeah, I'll be good with that. Just, again, I don't want us to jeopardize getting the funding. I just hate delaying this any
Same here.
further than it has been. And maybe, Phil, if you could just nicely just ask DOT to expedite it and tell them we're, very anxious to get this transit facility up and running and serving the million-plus riders. And we would certainly appreciate a speedy response from them so we can get this thing moving.
Absolutely.
Okay, with that, I will amend the motion to basically staff recommendation and bring back at the next meeting in August.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, the second is so amended, but I want to emphasize the importance of all of the coverings. You know, we need to be going forward, but understanding that there'll be no delay, that it'll be 4 weeks for our next meeting, and it historically takes 6 weeks for all of the other things to get together to start the project. And Phil, you need to invite them into the office to show them your award from last year, and maybe they can understand the importance of your value.
I'll wear it like a medallion when I meet
project.
them.
Thank you, sir.
And just, if I might, Mr. Chairman, can I amend it, just say if FDOT comes back next week and says, yeah, you guys, you know, it's good, we're getting you the paperwork, then can we move forward?
Oh, I think that was part of it.
Okay,
This
so-
just
Yes, sir.
allows it to, sometime
Come back
for
at
us
the
to
meeting
hear
in
from-
August, or they can move sooner if we get DOT approval.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is a moving train, yes.
Okay, everybody clear on the motion? Commissioner?
I have just one question. Rich and I had met and went over a couple of items, and I think going forward, when somebody offers us a site to use for something, a number of costs that we're having to pay for the 17th Street site would not have applied if it was built at the county admin in the parking lot, which was the original proposed site. The airport site where the temporary hub is, the permanent site we looked at there, a number of costs wouldn't apply. In the future, if we have somebody that says, here, we'll lease you this land for $1 a year, or whatever the number is, if we need to do a little site review, just, is water there, is sewer there, are we gonna have to build a lift station for $60,000 or $80,000? Are we gonna have to build a road to access the site? Are we gonna have to make provisions to the surrounding owners? Some of the things we got into over there, which add up to considerable dollars going forward. So just as we go forward on other projects, as an exercise to evaluate sites that are being proposed, because sometimes there's underlying costs that may apply to one, but that doesn't apply to another one.
That's fine, but in this case, I don't think this was a matter of us moving this way because of land that was cheaper. I think we moved this way because of continued resistance to the alternative sites.
Exactly.
Any other questions, concerns? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this issue? Mr. Johnson?
Bob Johnson, Corwin Subdivision. My recommendation is to table the decision until the next meeting, until you get all of the details worked out. Secondly, I don't know if any of the other municipalities have been requested to step forward and contribute, since this is a county project. It seemed like Fellsmere and Sebastian and some of these other municipalities ought to be able to step forward and contribute something towards this project, so that we can have a project that we're all happy with. Thank you very much.
Anybody else from the public wish to speak on this? Gentlemen, we have a motion from Commissioner O'Brien and a second from Commissioner Fleischer. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Rich. We move on to Public Works, Fellsmere, unmaintained, unpaved roadways. Rich, you're a star in today's program.
All righty. Fellsmere unmaintained, unpaved roadways. On June 27th, the Board of County Commissioners had a workshop in the city of Fellsmere to discuss this issue. The board's considering adding unmaintained, unpaved roadways to the responsibility of Public Works to maintain. The board directed staff to return to the July 12, 2016 with a recommendation of roadways for the board to approve. The parameters of that were for staff to expand the existing grader route by 6 to 10 miles to avoid the need to hire additional staff and purchase an additional grader. Staff was also to review this as a short-term adjustment to the existing grader route and to allow the maintenance to sunset within 3 to 5 years. This time frame was going to allow the Fellsmere Water Control District to obtain the authority to become an improvement district within that time frame. The board indicated that the county would add this to their legislative agenda. At the workshop, staff presented the board with background regarding the need to improve the unmaintained, unpaved roadways to meet minimum roadway standards as part of the expanding roadway maintenance in unincorporated Fellsmere. Staff informed the board that a majority of the unpaved roads being considered are not within county right-of-way or Fellsmere Water Control District right-of-way, but are actually on private property. The county, this also was raised that funding for the proposed maintenance of roadways located on private property would be necessary. The Florida Constitution limits the imposition of taxes and expenditures of tax revenues to public purposes. In order to comply with this constitutional restriction, the Florida Attorney General opined that the county may furnish road grading on private properties so long as the payment for the actual cost was borne by the owners of the private roadways. The Florida Attorney General also opined that the public must be granted the right to utilize such roadways. Examples of establishment as such are rights including granting of easements and dedication of right-of-ways. Per board direction, staff has analyzed the unmaintained, unpaved roadways within the unincorporated Fellsmere area, and we've put a list together of those roadways. We've also analyzed the need for stabilized material, which will be used to fill, level, grade the current unmaintained, unpaved roadways within the existing footprint of the existing roadways. Staff estimates that about 4,700 cubic yards of stabilized material will be necessary at a cost of $69,325. While we were evaluating the existing unmaintained, unpaved roadways, we also evaluated the 30 miles of roadway that are out there now that we have not been adding material unless absolutely necessary. We estimate that about 9,600 cubic yards will be needed to be added to those roadways to bring them up to a better traveling service at a cost of $141,600 for a total cost of material out there of $210,925. Please be aware that Fellsmere Water Control District, in an agreement we had with them, was supposed to be providing us with materials. They haven't done so in many years. The roadways that under the board consideration to add to the existing grader route are as follows. 81st Street, 85th Street, and 87th Street west of 130th Avenue, 93rd Street and 95th Street west of Park Lateral or 141st Avenue, and a section of roadway 109th, 46th Avenue, and 107th Street, which is west of Babcock Street or County Road 507. This adds a total of 9.2 miles to the existing grader route. We also analyzed our frequency of the current road grading system that we have now. Currently, we grade 30 miles of roadway every 10 working days, thereabouts, every couple of weeks. By adding this 9.2 miles of additional roadway, we see that stretching out to about every 14 work days once we establish the roadways for just standard grading. So that means instead of having your road graded every 2 weeks, it'll be every 3 weeks on average. It's recommended that the road list to improve the addition to the current grader route and the purchase of materials approved for the fill, leveling, and grading. It'll take the county, we'll need to revise the agreement between the county and the Fellsmere Water Control District. We anticipate it's going to take approximately 3 months to bring those 9.2 miles of roadway added if the material is approved to get them where we can just standard maintenance. This is The reason for this is that we need to divert staff from other county duties. We're going to try to use the grader, so we'll have to just shift things around. Funding for the additional material is not budgeted in the current fiscal year, but is available from the secondary road cash forward account. Budget amendment would be necessary to provide an additional $210,925. Staff does not recommend expanding the existing grader route to include any currently unmaintained, unpaved roadways without improving the roadways to meet minimum standards to ensure public safety, addressing the legal issues regarding maintenance of private property, and addressing stormwater runoff onto private property. Based on direction from the board at the June 27th workshop, staff offers the following to the board for staff direction. Direct the county administrator to add the unmaintained, unpaved roadways outlined above to the current grader route in unincorporated Fellsmere. Prepare a budget amendment for $210,925 to fund additional stabilized material for the unpaved roadways within unincorporated Fellsmere, and to prepare a revised agreement between the county and the Fellsmere Water Control District as follows. Update the current agreement with Fellsmere Water Control District to indemnify and hold harmless Indian River County for all claims related to the drainage right-of-way access. Update the current agreement with Fellsmere Water Control District to define roadway maintenance as maintenance of the Florida Water Control, Fellsmere Water Control District access road for drainage, canals, and ditches. Include in the agreement a requirement authorizing the direct discharge of untreated stormwater runoff from the unpaved roadways into the Fellsmere Water Control District ditch system. Update the current agreement to clarify the maintenance responsibilities for culverts and bridges within the Fellsmere Water Control District right-of-way. Update the current agreement to require the Fellsmere Water Control District to pursue state approval for the Water Control District to become an improvement district, so that the roadway maintenance will be the responsibility of the district to maintain. And update the current agreement to add the roadways listed above for maintenance for a 3 to 5 year period. Once the revised agreement between the county and the Fellsmere Water Control District is complete, staff can begin maintenance of the roadways listed above. Now, Dylan had a conversation with the Fellsmere Water Control District attorney. And Dylan, you want to let them know what you talked about?
Yes, after our last meeting with Mr. O'Hare had attended out in Fellsmere, I wanted to make sure that I reached out to Mr. O'Hare and at least start the conversation about amending our agreement with the Fellsmere Water Control District, either amending the agreement or coming up with a complete new agreement. We met on Friday last week and talked about a number of the issues just outlined and stated by Rich. He seemed agreeable to some of the indemnity language that we talked about and clarifying a lot of these issues. He did note that he felt that his client would be amenable to seeking a more limited request with the governor and the legislature for an improvement district that wasn't expanded to include everything from schools and hospitals and everything else, but more focused on roads and maybe one or two other things. Their thought now is, let's just focus on that issue in the improvement district. He did, so I'd already emailed Kate to include that as one of our priorities on our legislative priorities when we come back and bring that to the board. Additionally, he did note, however, he said it's just not going to happen right off the bat because once they get the improvement district, he still felt that it'll take a little bit of time to get the funding in place to be able to take over everything. So something that we bring back to the board, both boards, will obviously indicate a limited time frame for our responsibility, but certainly understanding the time that the Fellsmere Water Control District will need in order to get sufficient funds to start taking over a bunch of these roads. But I was happy to at least have an initial conversation with Mr. O'Hare on Friday, and we look forward to resolving this issue, at least the legal issues with the agreement, and bringing something back to our boards.
Thank you, Rich and Dylan. Any questions of the commissioners? Commissioner Zork.
Under you had mentioned that the current drainage district is in an agreement that provided some materials, but that they had stopped doing that some time back. Do we know why they stopped?
Yes, they ran out of material. Basically, when they dug park lateral,
Okay.
they had a big pile of dirt, and they were supplying us that dirt until they ran out. And once they ran out, that was it.
Okay.
There's a little bit of dirt left that Commissioner Davis pointed out in her field trip. However, you can't get to it without clearing some big trees, so it's not worth
Right,
our while
okay.
to get to it.
And they did indicate that they may get some spoil from, I think, C-54 Canal going forward, so they'll work with us to get some of that to us if they get it going forward.
Any other questions of staff? Anybody from the public wish to speak on this issue? Anybody from the public? It's a quiet public today. So, gentlemen?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I believe at the workshop, Commissioner Davis was working on the most appropriate delivery for the motion, so.
Well, this is a long motion.
Yeah,
you know,
I think-
this might strain Commissioner Davis.
I
I'm
just
gonna-
figured we'd talk for a minute and just give him time to formulate it. and-
I think we're there. I think with staff recommendation on that, it gets accomplished what we need. Clearly, you know, if this can be done with the controlled water as an improvement district, that would be very appropriate to be able to move forward with it. But I think this pretty much covers what the residents out there have been clamoring for quite a while. So I'll go ahead and move staff recommendation.
And this is seconded, and with a little bit of discussion, I want to say that I'm well pleased that all of the roadways are taken into consideration as we discussed out at the workshop.
Yeah.
That you looked at this broad scale and the timing. I understand that you would like to have more equipment to get it done, but thank you for working out a plan to ensure that we will get the thoughts and the wishes of this commission forward in it's an expeditious fashion. I know you said it'll take many months, but I think it's been long awaited, and I think the citizens out west of town will appreciate it. So thank you.
We had a motion from Commissioner Davis, a quiet second from Commissioner Zork. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Matter passes 5-0. Rich, thank you very much, and thank you very much for your work on this, not just today, but at the Felsmere Workshop. Appreciate it. We move now to County Attorney Matters, Demolition Lien Lot 1, Albert Grove Subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, I have to take just a quick break.
We'll take a 5-minute break. We'll reconvene the meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, and we'll do a little juggling of the agenda if we could. We have Judge Cox, who's been waiting patiently out in the audience on a criminal justice matter, so we'll move to 13C and then follow that up with the Zika virus presentation from the group with that, if we may.
Mr. Chairman? I'd be happy to move Judge Cox's item for approval.
Well, actually, I think the way that the recommendation is drafted is that the county attorney's office recommends that the board authorize the county attorney to monitor the membership of the committee, and then that the county attorney's office recommend that the board decide whether it wishes to file or authorize an entity to file on its behalf a notice of intent to submit an application. Thus, if the board wanted to move forward with actually doing the notice of intent or authorizing someone, then slightly just modify the recommendation accordingly.
Well, and actually, this is, I mean...
You want a presentation?
Just very briefly, I mean, this is one of those bureaucratic clusters where, it's seriously, if you look at it and think it, but I think Judge Cox is on the exact right track and doing what she needs to do under state statute. So I think the best thing to do is just to authorize the county attorney to work with Judge Cox to move this forward in the most expeditious fashion. And there's some still questions of, at one point, whether it's best for the county to be the sort of head agency or whether another group to be the head agency. But I think that we can leave in the hands of the attorney and Judge Cox.
And that was my intention.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted you to clear. So with that as a motion, I'll be happy to second it. Any other?
Kind of getting some head.
Cynthia Cox, Circuit Judge, 2000 16th Avenue. Thank you for taking this matter up, but I believe that the statute, the reinvestment grant, requires the county commission to designate an entity. You have to approve that before the managing entity can file a notice of intent. So I don't think you can leave it up to us. I think the commission
So
has
you want us to, who do you want us to designate?
the managing entity, the Southeast Florida Behavioral Health Network, and they're here if you have any questions of them.
So moved, yes.
So it's been moved and seconded?
Yes.
So any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judge Cox. I so much look
thank you.
Look forward to working with you on this, Judge Cox.
Thank you very much for the consideration.
And with that, we're going to move back in the agenda to a presentation on the Zika virus. And this will be presented by Doug Carson, John King, and Miranda Hawker. If you all would like to come up to the podium and lead away. And I'll remind everybody that we also moved up a matter from Commissioner Flesher and matter from Commissioner Zork, which will sort of make part of this whole Zika virus discussion. Good morning, Miranda.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you inviting us to come to give you our Zika update. And of course, I'm the administrator for the health department. With me today is Doug Carlson, who's the director for mosquito control, and of course, John King, who's our director of emergency services. And what I'd like to tell you just overall is how fortunate we are in this county to have the strength of the agencies that are involved in terms of what would be our Zika response, as well as our established partnerships and the strength of our Emergency Operations Center and Mosquito Control District. Zika is a flavivirus, which also includes yellow fever, dengue, and West Nile. It was isolated in Uganda in 1947 in the Zika forest, and at that time we discovered humans were the primary amplifying host. There have been outbreaks since 2007, and as you know, that first major outbreak was on the island of Yap in Micronesia. 2013, we saw an outbreak in French Polynesia. 2015, of course, the outbreaks in Brazil, and then also Puerto Rico. Aedes aegypti is the primary vector. We, of course, have that here in Florida, as well as other Aedes species in terms of Aedes albopictus might have the potential to transmit. So in terms of the primary mode of transmission, by far, mosquito-borne spread is the most important mode of transmission. We also do see sexual transmission. It can spread from infected men to their sex partners. The virus can be in semen longer than in blood, 60+ days. And what the recommendations are for people who have traveled to an area with Zika is for men to use a condom every time they have sex or don't have sex at all with their pregnant partners, because the risk is so great, and that's our primary concern. There can be transmission from the mother to the fetus at the time of delivery or during pregnancy. Pregnant women should not travel to areas where Zika virus is circulating. If they must travel. The recommendations are strongly to protect from bites and take steps to prevent sex transmission of the virus. In terms of blood transmission, in that outbreak in French Polynesia, it was discovered that 3% of asymptomatic blood donors did have Zika virus in their blood. And so the recommendations here in this country for the FDA with people with a travel history to an affected area are to avoid donation of blood for 4 weeks. In terms of symptom comparison, when we're looking for Zika, we are also looking at dengue and chikungunya because the symptoms are so similar. The main concern about Zika is in terms of the birth defects and Guillain-Barré syndrome. With Zika, only 1 in 5 people who have Zika are symptomatic, and that is a great concern. And it makes this disease particularly difficult. Incubation is between 2 and 14 days, so from the time you're exposed to the time that you develop symptoms is between 2 and 14 days. The main symptoms with Zika are fever, joint pain, rash, and conjunctivitis, which is red eyes. About 25 to 35% of cases don't have a fever. Symptoms typically resolve over 4 to 7 days. And still, those cases that are severe enough to require hospitalization is uncommon and case fatality is low. What I can tell you as part of the issuance of public health emergency and the changes in the administrative code following when the governor issued his executive order, Zika virus is reportable to the health department upon suspicion 24/7, and we take steps based on that report immediately, both with that healthcare provider and surrounding that person in terms of testing. The main concern, of course, with Zika is to protect pregnant women and their babies. That is our foremost concern. When I spoke to you the last time, they were still exploring the incidence of microcephaly, and now those Zika-related defects have been confirmed. The adverse outcomes are many. You see a list in terms of the screen: the calcium deposits, excess fluid, poorly formed brain structures, abnormal eye development, and fetal brain disruption sequence. When we're looking in terms of surveillance, in terms of microcephaly, what we currently see in Florida is about 150 cases a year. So that's what occurs right now. So when we look at the potential for Zika, if it were to circulate in Florida or we were to see increased incidence, we look at that comparison between the existing rate and what the other rate would be. Currently, Zika is present in 48 countries and territories throughout South America. And you can see all those countries throughout Mexico, and including Puerto Rico. You can see the countries on the screen. And to date, no locally acquired Zika cases have been reported in Florida or the continental U.S. That is the focus, I can tell you, of all of our response to these cases that are travel associated, is to prevent that local spread. And that has not occurred. In terms of the United States, of those 1,132 travel-associated cases, that means those people acquired infection to the area that they travel to. So if they travel to an area where Zika virus is circulating, they acquired it there. They did not acquire it here in the United States. 11 of those 1,132 cases are sexually transmitted. 2 of those cases had Guillain-Barré, and 206 of those cases are pregnant women. In terms of the U.S. territories, there are 2,526 locally acquired cases. 97% of those cases are in Puerto Rico. 7 had Guillain-Barré, and 166 women on that list are pregnant. CDC has established a Zika pregnancy registry. I can also tell you that they have a 24/7 line that healthcare providers can call if they have questions. Now, these numbers on the screen from July 8th are at 220, and there were 43 pregnant women. As of yesterday, we had 233 travel-associated Zika cases in 26 counties, and I believe actually that's about up to 28 now with the new cases, and 43 cases in pregnant women. So what's our response to the Zika virus? I can tell you we've done more things since we saw you the last time. John's going to update you as to the tabletop exercise we conducted at the EOC. Our primary key for our response to the Zika virus is communication, both in things like this public outreach that we're presenting here at the County Commission, looking at our health providers in terms of clinical and reporting guidance to the County Health Department. Our public service announcements are key, our communication with our municipalities, and our outreach, of course, to our vulnerable populations in terms of pregnant women. Surveillance, I touched on that a little bit, where we are seeking to increase our healthcare provider awareness, testing and reporting. We want to know about those people that are under suspicion, and we want to know about them right away. Lab testing, we're coordinating with healthcare providers to test suspected cases. Vector control, we're coordinating with mosquito control for surveillance around possible cases and conducting that joint public outreach. In terms of our outreach to pregnant women, we've been in regular contact with the OBGYNs in town, providing them guidance and information for their patients. And also, in terms of blood supply, if we did have a locally acquired case, I would be meeting with and contacting the local blood banks in terms of guidance from the Department of Health. These are examples on our screen of the information that we've been putting out, both from the Department of Health, the educational materials in terms of what we've provided to our OBGYNs. Below on the right is one of our PSAs that we have on the county channel, but have also supplied to the municipalities. And again, personal responsibility is going to be a key, especially not only now if we would have a travel associated case, but also in the event of local transmission. And I'm going to let Doug touch on that. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Did you say that there's about 150 cases a year of microcephaly not related to Zika?
Currently that occurs in Florida, yes.
In Florida. And do they know what the cause of those are? Can they trace it back to?
Those are cases that occur already, Commissioner Zork, so they could have varied causes.
Okay.
But what we would look for is any change in that rate when we're looking at Zika, and we look for, since we have our registry, since we're tracking women that test positive, we're monitoring those women throughout the pregnancy to see if we have cases of microcephaly that arise from that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll turn things over to Doug. Thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. I'm Doug Carlson. I'm the director of the Indian River Mosquito Control District. Appreciate the opportunity to be here again to speak to you. And my message has not changed too much over the past couple of months, but it doesn't hurt to repeat things. I know one question that we frequently get is, do we have the Zika mosquito here in Indian River County or Florida? And we certainly do. As Miranda mentioned, Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus are the two mosquitoes capable of transmitting it. And Aedes aegypti has probably been in our area for 200 to 300 years. Aedes albopictus more about the last 30 years or so. But they're both very prevalent at times. Those are the only two that we know of that can transmit this virus and which we have locally. And unlike some of the other mosquito-transmitted viruses that are carried by birds, transmitted from bird to bird by a mosquito, occasionally bird to man, and those include West Nile virus, St. Louis encephalitis. With Zika, dengue, or chikungunya, it's simply a human mosquito interaction, at least for the most part, that makes up that transmission cycle. And you've heard us talk before about the different kinds of habitats that produce these two mosquito species, bird baths, pots, containers. Really, we frequently refer to them as container-producing mosquitoes. And residents can go a long way in trying to control and keep their numbers down. These mosquitoes do not fly a very long distance, so if an individual keeps their property clean and their neighbors help, it can go a long way towards curbing the spread of them. Certainly a rain gutter is a bit harder to tell if you have water being held up there, but that too is a good source of these mosquitoes. Tires certainly have been in the news for many, many years as a source for these mosquitoes, and our district, going back to the early 1990s, has had sort of a part-time collection program of picking up waste tires around the county, and it's really amazing. In that 23 or 24 year period, we estimate that we've picked up about 100,000 tires. It's just as
if they too keep reproducing on their own. There also are some natural habitats that can produce these mosquitoes, in particular the plant bromeliads, and people call us and ask, well, what can I do to prevent these sources from producing mosquitoes? And we tell them that really the best way is to get rid of them, but many folks love their bromeliads, and we give them some suggestions as far as some pesticide spraying that they can do to help with that. But they also produce a few other mosquito species. The one phrase that is used very commonly here over the past couple of months is that standing water is the problem in regard to Zika mosquito production. And we really feel that that's a misnomer, in that folks then think that it's water in their swales, in their ditches, in pastures and groves. And that type of standing water on the ground does not produce these two mosquito species. It can produce other types, but not Aedes aegypti or Aedes albopictus. It is, as we just showed, the artificial and a few natural type containers that are the sources of concern. These mosquitoes are aggressive daytime biters. And as I mentioned, they do have a short flight range, unlike, say, the salt marsh mosquitoes that can travel easily several miles, and they have been shown to go up to 20 or 25 miles. These two mosquitoes are not that way. They'll probably travel at most a couple of hundred yards away from where they were produced. Given the fact that they're daytime active, our typical truck spraying isn't very effective against them. It can be of some benefit, but it's not getting the spray out at the time that they're most active, and spraying in the daytime just isn't effective anyway. There can be some targeted hand spraying essentially around locations that can provide some benefits, and Miranda mentioned how surveillance, once we learn that someone is a suspect case, it typically includes a visit to the residents in the neighborhood. Some handheld targeted spraying can be beneficial then, but it truly is eliminating of container habitats that goes a long way towards getting the job done. Community participation is important, and this Zika tabletop exercise that a number of us, along with Commissioner Flesher, participated in last week, I think was a very important step in that direction. And with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to John King.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is John King, Emergency Services Director. And I would just like to start a couple of months ago when there was a discussion before this board. One of the things that came out of that discussion was to begin to coordinate public information, public outreach, and county administrator directed staff to make sure that we had as many links and as much information as possible available on the county webpage. Much information was coming from the state or other agencies similar to that to express this is what you need to know about Zika, because I think there's a great deal of misinformation. I think Doug may have said it best when he said the issue about standing water. Standing water is not the issue. Water in bromeliads and some other shallow reservoirs of water are a bigger issue, but we live in Florida, and there's going to be swale ditches that routinely have water in them, and that's a question we were getting too prior to the last week, because we've had calls at our office as well. But last week, there was an effort among all the agencies that have an interest and a responsibility for Zika to meet at the county EOC. We met last Wednesday for several hours. It was actually much of the day. And the discussion was to explain to everybody else in the room, very much of a directed discussion, what the agency's policies were, what they're planning, and how we're going to respond locally if something were to happen here. And it was an information sharing. We wanted to make sure that we're making the best use of our time to make sure that the information gets out. And it truly was an effort to do some community preparedness. Again, information has been available. There's been an effort to do that. There was representatives available from the cities, the counties. The county was there, the state. We had special districts like the mosquito control, and health care providers were there as well, because we all have a vested interest in sharing the surveillance information that we have and making sure that the information is current and up to date. And should an event happen in our county, we want to make sure that our policies mesh, our information sharing meshes. And I would share with you that if something were to happen here, you would probably see the EOC stand up, because we have a telephone bank there. We can answer many of the frequently asked questions in a very expedient way. And there was a commitment by every agency there to share as much information on our county televisions, on our web pages. And we also discussed things that go beyond just the public. We also talked about responder safety and healthcare workers, the safety of what happens if somebody presents in your facility with potential Zika virus. And so I think Ms. Miranda probably started the conversation. One of the best statements possible was that the ability to respond locally has a lot to do with the relationships we have among the various agencies that were there. And I would share with you, it was very much cooperation, very much people saying, we have information we want to share with you, and others saying, we have a better mechanism to help you get that information to the community before an event happens, and if the worst happens and something does present here, what are we going to do next? And so I'm here to answer any questions that you have, and I'm also here because I think one of the things I'm also responsible for is helping to share information to the greater part of the community as quickly as I can, so I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Chief King?
What were some of the agencies that were represented or that came in and participated in the workshop on July 6th, or the tabletop discussion?
City of Felsmere was there, the City of Vero Beach was there, the City of Sebastian was there, and they had multiple representations from everything from their airport director to their community development director to their public works folks. We had, of course, Doug and some of his senior staff was there, and one of their elected officials, Tom Lowther, he was also present. Commissioner Fletcher represented the commission here, and we certainly recognize that probably more of you would have been there, but with all of the laws we have about having too many of you at the same place at the same time together, Commissioner Fletcher was there. The county administrator, one of his very first days, was there, and he was there from probably 9 o'clock in the morning until probably 2 in the afternoon, and he was a very active participant. And so I want to thank him publicly for taking time to be there to help us and to help understand what issues we're dealing with at the local level. So.
Any other questions, Commissioner
Not
O'Brien?
necessarily a question, but just kind of a comment. I think it's important that residents know what to look for if they have this particular 2 mosquito species in their yard. And Doug had mentioned one thing in his slide, that they're more active as a daytime biter, and that is a big change from most mosquitoes. Most mosquitoes are very active at a twilight period, either sunset or sunrise. And these mosquitoes will be the middle of the day, and you can be sitting out in your patio, and they'll come to get a blood meal. So that's one thing residents can look at. If they're getting bit during the day, that's a good indicator. The other one is these 2 species, Aegypti and albopictus, are very, very flighty, very light-touch mosquitoes. A lot of the folks that live near the lagoon, we have the salt marsh mosquito, and they come in pretty hot and heavy. They'll come in, you can almost feel them land, and they're jabbing you right away and go straight for the blood meal. Same Commissioner Davis out in your neck of the woods, the culex out there that breed in the groves and stuff, they're pretty aggressive too. You kind of know when one of those have hit you and landed. The albopictus and Aegypti are very flighty. You won't feel them when they land. If you make the slightest move, they take off again, so they're kind of hard to swat because they're very sensitive to any movement, and they'll take off again. So again, that's the second indicator. If you're out your patio or porch during the day and you have this mosquito kind of coming in and going, coming and going, coming and going, that's a good sign it's either Aegypti or albopictus. So just to get that out there so they know what to look for.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fletcher.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I want to thank the Health Department for getting this together. And Chief, Etta ran a great show. I have to say that sometimes these state directives or mandates are at best costly to us and really don't have the impact. I think we had a tremendous impact. I feel confident that we are best prepared, knowing that the EOC could be activated if necessary, and that all of the resources were immediately volunteered, that even though we don't have a case, we need to get the communication going. A couple of the benefits of the discussion was the fact that everyone had great ideas, and they're going to be formulated, and I want the public to know that all of the entities involved shared all of their contact, and we might have a lot of the constructive information that was shared will be shared with the health department, our emergency services director, and it will be formulated and added to the information, whatever information we can to protect the public, to inform the public, to reduce rumors, will be added to the existing information and channeled into the website. And that's just great news. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Fletcher, do you want to move into your item?
One of the items that was thank you. One of the items that was discussed during the day, and it was right after Doug's presentation, a concern about tires. And tires have been an age-old problem. I don't necessarily know if what I want to do will make it go away. That's why I have other things that will be coming forward in future meetings. Still formulating their endeavors. But one of the concerns that the Mosquito Control District, Tom Lowther, had discussed, and Water Management District, as well as our representative, was that there is an ongoing situation with tires. And it's whose responsibility is it? And it's everybody's responsibility. And there is an inordinate amount of tires being collected at a great cost to the taxpayer. And we need to reduce these man-made reservoirs or incubators for the mosquitoes. One of the current practices when you go to change tires is you're offered an option by another mandate that you can have your tires reclaimed, and there's a handling fee, and it's $3 to $4.50. And when people are getting tires, they look at this as, well, I could save $12 or $18 on this tire change. I'll keep the tires. And most of the vendors, the retailers, are happy to reduce that fee or not apply the fee, and they'll stack the tires in the car and they'll go on their merry way. Well, the operator of the vehicle will go to a convenience center and go to drop off the tires, and they can drop off 2 tires, and then they're charged for any additional tire, and there is a schedule, and we've looked at the policy, and I believe that if we made it a little easier for the citizens to be able to take their tires to a convenience center, i.e. understand that maybe they might be changing all 4 tires or the spare as well, give them the opportunity to drop off all of those tires, because the tires are they'll drop off 2, they'll still want to save the money, and we will find those tires somewhere at a canalway near where you live. And I think that this will reduce some of the tire abundance that's out there in the community and alleviate some of the burden on the management districts and as well as our own staff, Road and Bridge, to be able to have to pick up those tires. So I would like to ask if we can change the policy from the current policy is 2 to 5 or 6. It still reduces the likelihood that a commercial retailer will be able to utilize the convenience centers, but a citizen will be able to bring their tires back to a convenience center and have them properly disposed. At the present time, we have, there's another item I'd just like to look at. Presently, we're taking those tires, and those tires are then brought to a facility where they are used as fuel for electricity. It might be adding a bit much to the carbon footprint, and we might want to look at other options in order to address those tires, because the tires could be shredded, used in other areas, and there are other recycling avenues that we can take with tires. So I'd like to ask staff to do that as well, to look at other options in handling reclaimed tires at the convenience center, as opposed to just merely shipping them off and having them burned. So with that, I just wanted to increase the number. So I'd like to make a motion to increase the number of tires that can be handled at the convenience center from 2 to 6, so that we can increase the likelihood that the tires will be taken off the canals and the roadways and into the proper facility.
We have a motion from Commissioner Flesher.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. Any questions, comments? Mr. Brown?
Mr. Chairman, I think we could certainly do that. As Commissioner Flesher correctly stated, our limit is 2 tires at a time at the convenience centers. We could temporarily go to 6 at this time. We would just need to direct our Republic that operates those convenience centers for us, and we can do that. I would think that they would do that within the existing contract. Do want to give you the caveat that they have the ability to come back and charge us for extra things. I think this should be a fairly nominal impact, so I would hope that there wouldn't be an increased charge there, and that would certainly be our position, but just wanted to make you aware of that potential thing out there, and we will be in communication with them on these changes.
I can
if
appreciate
the
that, but
motion moves forward.
I don't see how we would have 2, or if we have 3 people bringing in 2 tires, that there would be any change in, or burden in operation in any way in the facility.
I would agree, and that's our position, that it wouldn't be a substantial impact on them. So I don't think any adjustment will be needed, and we've got a good partnership with Republic. So I don't anticipate that there will be an extra charge there. But we just wanted to point that potential out to you.
Thank you.
And just for information, do you think we could have staff come back after, say, a year and just give us, if they have tire counts from previous years, sort of an update, and if they have any, whatever they've learned from that?
See if we had an impact, as long as, and as well as I'd like staff to take a look at other avenues of recycling the tires. Yes, that's a part of the initial motion.
Great. Anybody from the public wish to speak on this issue? Anybody from the public? Any other questions from Commissioner Zorc?
Yes, would we put a caveat, this would be the residential disposal of tires. We don't want some of the smaller tire facilities to collect the money at their facility, then use the 6 drop-off.
Again, that's what was happening, and in addition, if you see tires along I-95 or out State Road 60 towards the Lake Wales area, you know where they came from. And so does the management districts. They have these continual hot spots. But the good news is that the Sheriff's Office representative was there, and the lieutenant said very clearly that any reports of recurring areas will be addressed, and there will be investigations. It's very difficult with tires, but observation is the best tool to an investigation. So I think we'll be looking at this a lot deeper so we can alleviate the tire concerns in Indian River County.
To follow up on Commissioner Zorc, your motion is for residential tires?
Yes, it is residential tires.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions, concerns? We have the motion from Commissioner Flesher, second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you,
Thank you very
gentlemen.
much, Commissioner Flesher. And we'll move to Commissioner Zorc's items on the Zika virus.
Yes, and actually, my request was I had a conversation with somebody from the medical field that wasn't able to participate or be at the July 6th meeting, and they said, you know, what could be shared to the public at that meeting? And I said I'd be happy to have the folks come in today and make their presentation. They can pick up the additional information that's been presented here today. So it was more of just informational to share the July 6th workshop that was put on to kind of share it to a broader public. So there's no other additional.
And that was a good PowerPoint presentation. I think
Yes.
that's something we can put on the website in case
Yes,
anybody from the
that'd be
public
great.
wants to see it and be updated. And if Miranda wants to, as she learns more, update that PowerPoint presentation, we can just update what's on the web to keep that the information as current as possible. And I think we'd probably be happy to put the most current information on the web at almost any time. So I'd like to thank everybody, Chief King, Miranda, Mr. Carlson, for coming here today and making that presentation, and Commissioner Zorc and Commissioner Flesher for adding to the discussion. With that, we'll move on to county attorney matters. Do we take the vote? 5-0, yeah. County attorney matters, demolition lien, Lot 1, Albrecht subdivision. Good morning, Mr. DeBrawl.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill DeBrawl on behalf of the County Attorney's Office. This was a demolition of a parcel of property owned by Hecto Bello. The structure was damaged by fire. We went ahead and proceeded with demolishing the structure on its own, not in a group as we usually do. There was an open pool associated with this. The structure that was damaged by fire, a garage, and also a pool cabana. So the cost of this is $15,490. $5.10, a little bit more than our average because of the extra structures and the pool. This is the opportunity for the owner to come and object to the cost of the demolition. If there are no objections, and we have not heard from Mr. Bello, we'd ask the board to go ahead and approve the amount of the lien.
Any questions for Mr. Brawl?
Second.
I'll take the motion from Commissioner O'Brien, second by Commissioner Flesher, but the question from Commissioner Zork.
Do we know, is there a mortgage on this property?
There is no mortgage on the property.
Okay. And normally when somebody has insurance in effect, it pays for the demolition after an incident.
I would venture to say that they don't have a mortgage.
Right, then they didn't carry the other. Right, so, okay.
All in
That's
favor?
all. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. The next is disposition of real property, and that is going to be handled by County Attorney Reingold.
Thank you very much to the board. Pursuant to state statute, there are several different ways that a county can dispose of real property. One of those is to have it go to the highest and best bidder. Another one is a private sale if it's an unbuildable lot or if it's property that's $15,000 or less in value. Third opportunity is through an exchange of property with a property owner. The fourth is that it's a sale to a governmental entity or a nonprofit organization. And then finally, as for uses as affordable housing purposes. Under the statute, a county can actually adopt alternative measures and processes by ordinance in which it expands the list of opportunities by which it disposes of real property. At the June 7th meeting, the board discussed several different options and had requested the county attorney's office and staff to kind of examine different options and come back to the board with an item. Therefore, today we are coming back and wanted to talk about a couple different opportunities that we've discussed in our memo. The first alternative option is that it be a minimum base bid. Essentially, you would use the process of advertising for bids, but you would include a minimum price that you'd be looking for. Thus, it would be much like our current bid process, but essentially this board would set a minimum dollar number that it would accept. This would have the benefit of having a level playing field between bidders, but at the same time offering a minimum price that people would know that we would expect in the process. Another option would be able to use an auction house. Like the current sealed bid process, it allows for a level playing field, but it's open and transparent, and bidders would be out there bidding against themselves publicly. And then finally, another option is that you would use a real estate agent. Real estate agent can bring knowledge about a piece of property, their education of the area, and use that to help get a better purchasing price for the county, for property the county would want to dispose of. Agent would also be motivated to complete the sale, so hopefully you get a better price and a quicker sale. The difficulty or the difficult aspect of doing this is you'd actually have to pick a particular realtor. That could be difficult in the community. We have a number of realtors and we certainly don't want to step on toes. I know one of the issues that was brought up at the last meeting or at the last discussion on this point was maybe it'd be the opportunity for the real estate or the Realtors Association of Indian River County to list this as an organization. Since that June 7th meeting, I reached out to the president of our local association, and he just stated that really wasn't a feasible opportunity. You're really going to have to pick somebody. Certainly, if the board was interested in going through this opportunity or this option, we could do sort of an RFQ, get a couple real estate agents listed as part of our already on board, maybe a couple for residential, a couple for commercial industrial, and that we could sort of use different agents through the process. And finally, the board could consider a request for proposal process. This is kind of a unique process for the disposition of property, may be appropriate for a particular rare and unique piece of property. So those are just some of the different opportunities. I can say I based a lot of this on the Citrus County model. I know they were looking at expanding the base of opportunities for just for allowing property to be disposed in addition to those already set forth in the statute. Merely just wanted to recommend that the board consider this item today and decide whether it would like to direct the county attorney's office to draft an ordinance that would adopt some or all of these different options and then have us set public hearings. And with that, I simply turn it back over to the chair for discussion and then for public input.
Mr.
Thank you
Chairman.
very much. Commissioner Davis.
I'd kind of see this as a solution looking for a problem. I'm satisfied with where it's been for the last, I don't know, since 1925, and leave this alone.
Leave sleeping dogs lie?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? So with that, we will just pass by this item. We don't need to vote for this, Mr. Rangel? Okay.
You didn't give me direction to move forward, and I will then cease.
We'll move on to item D, county business between July 13th and August 15th, 2016. Mr. Rangel.
Thank you very much. Just a quick note for the board. As you know, we are going into a break right now between July 12th and August 16th meeting. I just simply wanted to let you know that there are certain items that this board cannot delegate to the county administrator. Those include, but is certainly not an exhaustive list. County administrator can't adopt an ordinance or can't approve a plat on his own. Those are types of things that need board approval. Thus, we will continue to be working to make sure that county business is performed. But if we have an item that needs board approval or action on, we'll certainly let the chair know, and the chair will have the opportunity to call a special call meeting between now and August 16th. Just simply wanted the board to be aware that these types of issues do exist out there.
Very good, and that doesn't look like it needs any action, so we can move to IRC versus Turner Construction, which was added to the agenda.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the board's indulgence to allow for this as an emergency item today. On July 7th, the parties in the Indian River County versus Turner Construction Company et al. Lawsuit attended a mediation. At the conclusion of the mediation, the parties had agreed to a settlement agreement. We were very happy about that. According to the proposed settlement agreement that I've presented to the board today, the defendants will agree to pay Indian River County a combined total of $1.2 million. In exchange, Indian River County will release the defendants from all claims, known or unknown, patent or latent, that arise out of or related to the lawsuit. Additionally, all the parties have agreed that we will take reasonable efforts not to disparage one another. We simply recommend that the board approve the settlement agreement and authorize the chair to sign any documents necessary to effectuate the settlement agreement. I obviously am here for questions, and if there's anyone from the public, I will also be happy to answer.
Gentlemen, any questions of Mr. Rangel?
How did the distribution, so 1.2, we obviously had multiple parties involved.
You just got that here on page 2?
Yeah. Okay. Does the public have a copy of that, or since it's added late?
It should be available to the public, but I'd be happy to read the issue. It is Sun Sky Roofing LLC had agreed to pay $330,000. Suprema Inc. had agreed also to pay $330,000. Donadio had agreed to pay $290,000, and Turner Construction Company had agreed to pay $250,000 for a grand total of $1.2 million. We didn't specifically look for any defendant to pay a certain number. We essentially worked with the mediator, and this was a position we were willing to accept.
I'll move to approve the settlement.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Zork. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yeah, just Dylan, have we been paying the legal fees for this on an hourly basis going forward, or is there a contingency payment out of the settlement?
We had been paying them consistently over time.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to thank Dylan and everybody who's worked on this. This goes back at least 5 years. Sometimes things work slowly, but the legal department and others work diligently on this, and I think it's work which results in great benefits to the taxpayers of Indian River County. So thank you all very much for this.
And I want to thank Murphy and Walker, their local law firm that we've utilized in this case and another one, and I just thought they did a great job, and it was great to use local talent that did a really good job in this.
And in response to Commissioner Zor's question, I want to say when we have these add-on items, they are added to the website. They are all posted on, so the public can see them.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. And with that, Commissioner Davis has an item which he has got to get up to Sebastian for, so we're going to have a long break. We will start the break now, and we will be...
Mr. Chairman, if I might, under my matter, I'm hoping we can do that in about 2 minutes, and I know Mrs. Austin is here.
Fine. Bring her up, and the clock is running.
Okay.
Second.
That was quick. To designate a poet laureate position, a 4-year term. It's honorary. There'll be no county funding. Part of the discussion last week, Mr. Chairman, was you wanted to make sure that all of the other agencies could comment and stuff, and I think with Ms. Offit that they're going to allow nominations from the community, and it'd still be the Laura Riding Jackson as the official designee, but they would open it up to the community and accept nominations to get public input and then come to us with their recommendations.
Moving this forward, I'll just ask if there's anybody else from the public who wants to intervene in any way. So I'll be happy to entertain a motion.
There'd be a motion.
Hand in the back.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to introduce Maurice Stiefel, who is the chairman of the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation, in case things get tough.
Okay. And Nancy, you did talk with Barbara, and you'll work out.
I did. I spoke to Mrs. Hoffman of the Cultural Council. I understand that Jason telephoned her and told her of the commission's concerns for transparency and wanted their input, or asked if she wanted input. To be fair, I think she would have liked to have been here today, but had another commitment. We talked, and I think we do have a little bit of a difference of opinion. That's only right that I share with you. We told Mrs. Hoffman and others, as I did you, that we would open it up to the public. We would invite applications from the public. And she said, well, she felt that that was what we're doing is within the purview of the local arts agency, and they really did want to have a part of the process. I said, what part of the process would you like? She suggested that the Arts Council, the Cultural Council, would ask for applications from the community, well, she said from the Cultural Council, bundle them up and then give them to us. Well, frankly, that doesn't seem to be productive, and it makes us feel like we have somebody looking over our shoulder. What I proposed to Mrs. Hoffman was that, and I do have a letter that I read to her, but basically it would be, of course, let me backtrack. I have disclosed to you that we have someone in mind that we would like to be the inaugural poet laureate. And this individual would really set the basis and the bar for the poet laureate status. Anyone who applied after that term of office would have quite a leap to reach this person's qualifications. And I'm not saying them out loud. Whoops.
Nancy, Commissioner Davis has to leave, so we need to get to this real quick. Okay.
All right, sorry. Well, what I told Mrs. Hoffman, I read it to her, that prior to the end of a poet laureate's term, that would be the subsequent ones, Laura Riding Jackson will seek applications from the public for consideration as a successor poet laureate. And I suggested to her that we can expand that by saying from the public via the Cultural Council and the media. And then while I'm sitting here, I also thought in the county's website. But the point is, and she frankly wasn't satisfied with that and wondered why we would contact the media and not the Cultural Council do it. So I'm giving you the benefit of her thoughts. She's not here, and I...
Mr. Chairman, where I am on this, there's a lot of groups, Career Source, they do best places to work, and they broadcast emails looking for nominations. Indian River Chamber does it for their industry awards, and various other groups do the same thing. They broadcast to the community, please submit nominations, but they kind of run the thing themselves. I don't want to make this over complicated, and I think the Laura Riding Jackson Foundation can handle this. The Cultural Council will have plenty of opportunities to submit nominations. So my motion would be that we do approve the designation of an honorary poet laureate position with a 4-year term, and then we designate the Laura Riding Jackson as the official agency to review candidates and make a recommendation to the board.
Second. We've got a motion from Commissioner O'Brien, a second from Commissioner Flesher. Anybody in the public want to comment on this? Gentlemen? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Just before you go on a break, would you like me to draft up a resolution to bring back to the board, just so we've got something formal?
I believe that's probably
Yes.
appropriate.
And
Okay,
then
great.
just like the updated Nassau County one, Dylan, where this current county commission chairman becomes the chair of that nomination committee.
I'd be delighted to have him a member of another committee.
I'll be gone by then.
Mr. Chairman. That's a joke.
Commissioner, excuse me, Freddie.
Not in reference to this, something quick just hit my mind, and I really should have mentioned it earlier. We have a 101-year-old resident here, been here since 9 o'clock this morning, and she's sat patiently. I know you want to take a break, but if in any way you can entertain what she's here for before you take that break.
Well, I'd be happy to get her comment from her, but the item will probably have to come back after the break.
What is it? I mean,
Well,
is
I believe this is on the Pinson Water?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And she's been here all that time. I wish
I think that's fine. I don't think we can vote on the matter until later, but we could certainly take her comments now.
And I apologize, Freddie, that I'm the speaker at the Sebastian Chamber of Commerce today. Is the reason why I've got to get up that way.
I should have thought of it early, but I just didn't. But do what you have to do. But I just want to make sure.
Mr. Chairman, we could take that one man
Take
short.
the whole item? Okay, Commissioner Davis, if you have to leave, I think we can, the way this is structured and the way I'll try to structure or ask for a motion on this.
Okay.
I think we can do
We
it
can't
so
ask her
that
to
it's.
wait
And what I'll do is I'll pull myself up to speed and watch. I'll watch it.
Very good. Okay, so.
And we're going to make the decision later?
Well, I mean, what I'm going to be asking for is not a final decision today. So I think we could probably get, hopefully 3 votes to just bring it forward to the next stage.
We'll get consensus on the
So,
issue.
fine. So we will then move to my items, which is dealing with Pinson subdivision and Waterfort. And 1 second. I'm going to ask Vinny to make his way up here. So we have a small subdivision called the Pinson subdivision, which is located in Gifford, and there are about 14, 15 different parcels in it, and it's very near US 1, it's very near US County Water. It is an area, though, where the water is very bad. Some residents just today brought this in for me to give an example of the water. It's one with evidently particularly high iron content and not good, basically from shallow wells. But for me, more importantly, is the fact that this subdivision lies between 2 areas, one an abandoned gas station, or formerly abandoned gas station, and the other a former grow site. We had a lot of pollution that had come into the ground. So not only do you have sort of bad water, but you have elements of pollution in the water. And unfortunately, there are 1 or 2 people short of getting the normally 66 2/3% necessary for an assessment program. But in a couple cases in the past, including one recently up in Sebastian, we were able, with the guidance of the Utilities Department, to come up with a sort of alternate fix. And that's what I'm going to be looking for today is an alternate fix. There are, again, about 50, well, how many actual residents as opposed to parcels?
There's 14 properties that would be benefiting from the subject area on page 342 of your agenda packet.
But how many of those are residents?
All those are the 0100 code of the residents.
Okay,
Either
so-
vacant parcels or they have a structure.
So
on them.
that's about the size and scope we're talking about, and how far are you from existing water?
The existing water is on the east side of US 1. We have an 8-inch water main that runs north-south, and this is the wedge-shaped piece that would be off of 20th Avenue and 42nd Place. So it'd be a very simple construction project to install a 6-inch water main, 1 fire hydrant, and associated services to each of those benefiting properties.
And I believe your original estimate would be around $3,100 per unit.
That's correct. The
If
total
you
cost is
went
about
through an assessment.
$43,000 for the total construction cost to be spread by 14 parcels, about $3,100.
So I'd like to see if the gentleman from the Health Department would like to come up for a moment and render his his opinion of the water.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just want to give a little insight in that local area that we were just describing. The
name and address for the record, please.
I beg your pardon?
Name and address for the record.
I beg your pardon, yes. My name's Charles Vogt. I'm Environmental Specialist 3 with Florida Department of Health and Indian River.
Thank you.
The section has been sampled over the years as part of a state program, and there has been detects in 2 of the wells. And when I say detects, I mean constituents of petroleum degradation, but not at a regulatory level where we would be out making alterations to the potable water well itself. This would be something that would have to increase a couple orders of magnitude before it become a health concern or a maximum contaminant level if you want to use the acronym, the MCL. Our interest here is this area has a possibility from either side. And when we sample in these wells, we sample only at that moment. So we're speculating that historical issues could have occurred and or future issues could occur in this area. So we want to, as soon as possible, get these people connected to public water, thus avoiding the potentials either way.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Vogt?
Mr. Chairman, this was taken out of the tap, right?
Correct.
This is not a septic tip?
No.
Okay. I mean, this is...
That's bottled at the source then.
So, any questions of Mr. Vogt? With that, I'll ask if there's anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, good morning. Tony Brown, 4159 57th Court, also Florida Department of Health. This item was brought to me by Ms. Sherry Doe, who resides in that area, and her home, her husband changed out the plumbing about 4 times in the last 6 years. It's horrendous. We have Ms. Jeannie Bonwell, who raised me. She's 101 years old, and it's deplorable that she would have to live with this type of water, not only from a drinking aspect, but bathing and other things that occur. And hopefully you commissioners will find it in your hearts to move forward and afford this lady her last days some decent potable water. Thank you.
Ma'am, if you're in favor of this water project, would you just raise your hand? Very good, she's in favor of it. Thank you. Anybody else from the public?
Look at you.
Quickly, I know you're pressed for time. I just thank you so much, Commissioner, for moving this up on your agenda for her and other residents. I love what I see in Indian River County happening. If one part of Indian River County is in a deficit or in need of some type of services, you as commissioners have the heart to take a close look at it and rectify that situation. And you're doing that just now. You did it on Coon Bottom, so you should also do it on Possum Top. And that's what they call that particular part sometime.
Okay.
Did you know that?
So with that, I've got two different motions in mind. The first one is to direct staff to go ahead and come up with some possible game plan to get water to the Pinson subdivision basically as soon as possible. Then hopefully they'll be able to come back in the August meeting for something we can actually approve, which will put us on that path.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you must have seen, I don't know how you could have seen my notes. They're all the way over here, but I would like to make that motion. I would not be rinsing a truck with this water.
Well, and I'll be happy to second that motion. Any discussion?
One, I believe, and Jason, if you could let me know if this is correct, that the actual cost to connect, I know in Wabassa, through the SHIP funds, we've been able to either through grants or other assistance, pay for those connection charges. You know, when we put it in front of the property, then we have to get it connected so that the user has the benefit of the project. So I think there would be an opportunity for some applications through SHIP, and we have some targeted money, I think, that would go to help these folks make that connection charge.
So any other questions? We have a motion from Commissioner Fletcher, seconded by myself. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. The second one is, when you look at some of the income levels of the people in this neighborhood and realize that even if we go ahead and finance this, the monthly charge for these people is going to go up from they presently just have a sewer charge of about $25, $30 a month, and it could go up to $80, $90 a month, regardless of how much they use. So there are some ways of possibly reducing that. So I'd like to authorize utilities to look in the possibility of a donation of ERUs for the ERUs that aren't used anywhere else. A limited program. I know they're afraid of letting the camel under the tent, but for instance, I have 13 ERUs, no, I think it's 10 ERUs up at a property up in Wabasso that I've been paying the county tons of money for 25 years or so, with the hope that I've developed that property. But now the state's come along and said they want to probably buy the property for a stormwater area. So most probably I'd have to charge the state a huge amount of money to buy the ERUs from me, or possibly use them for a project like this. So I'd like to see if we could direct staff to come up with some type of program where only if it's a donated basis, that you can donate it back to the ERUs back to the county. And my understanding from Mr. Burke is that the best way might be to go through the SHIP program, and where those at certain income levels can then get the advantage of these ERUs. And I'm not asking for a vote to approve this today. I just want to see if you can come up with something that works well with residents and works with what I believe is the broader policy of this county to get people on county water and off of shallow wells.
Well, again, it worked well in Wabasso with Julianne's input and great debate, and the state folks responded. And I was on the SHIP board at the time, and it worked. And it can work again, so I most certainly am open for that option.
I'm happy to second that. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you very much. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting till 1:40.
Thank you.
Oh, wonderful.
Turn their microphone on.
To reconvene. As Commissioner Davis is not here, we're going to skip by his matters for the moment and move on to Commissioner Zork's matters. But before we start that, we had a request to have a couple moments by Mr. Idolette. So, Mr. Idolette, if this is a good time.
Good evening, Joe Idolette, 4570 57th Avenue. Come as the president of the Progressive Civil League as well as a citizen in the community. 2 points. 45th Street, improvement, beautification. I'd like to thank you. I love it. My father and I, we talk about it all the time. And there's one question that I ask myself, is it better than what it was before? And I would say absolutely yes. I wanted to make sure I let you all know that. It's appreciated. And I thank you for that. And the second thing is the walking trail. The walking trail, I even enjoy the walking trail. Right now it's hot, So we walk either early in the morning or late in the afternoon, but the walking trail is beautiful. We're enjoying the walking trail. I just want them to come down and let you all know that we thank the commissioners for all that's being done, and we look forward to the future, but we always come to you all with problems, and we always want to give you a hard time. So I'm a firm believer when something go well, we also need to come and do that also.
Well, Mr. Idle, let me thank you very much for that, because sometimes things get confusing around here. You don't know if you're doing the right thing, because I believe you were at the NAACP forum last night, and my goodness, you would have thought we hadn't done anything right for the last 20 years based on these opponents we have. I mean, talk about it's like the chicken little sky is falling time after time after time. So at this time, I very much appreciate your kind words, and I hope that you get Teddy Floyd out there to do some of that walking with you.
Oh, yeah. He needs to.
It's so close to his house. I mean,
he can carry him.
There's no, and tell him not to drive down to the walking field. He can walk down.
That's what he does.
Tell him he just needs to start walking down.
But thank you all, and you all have a tough job.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
Mr. Idolette said that he comes here with problems. I don't think so.
I'm not necessarily saying me. I'm just saying people in general may come with an issue. So when we come with you with issues, when something good happens, we also need to come and say and acknowledge those things also.
Well, the difference, Mr. Idolette, is that you come in with challenges that with resolution, that you actually do offer some solution that we can work and get through it together. That's the difference. And we really appreciate it. And we do appreciate the fact that during that 45th Street project discussion, that you took the time to come down to community development and go over all of the issues and look at the overlays and get it right so that we could have that satisfying moment.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It's good, and we're looking forward to the future, but I want to thank you all.
Thank you very much.
And I want to make sure I always acknowledge staff too. Staff is good. All right.
Thank you.
I don't want to leave them out.
Commissioner Zork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is discussion of road maintenance for 36th Street between US 1 and 11th Drive. That is basically the bottom of the ramp of the emergency room. Before departing, Public Works Director Chris Moore left. I had kind of a list of items to review with him, and I said, as we're looking at making improvements on 37th Street while we're in the neighborhood and a contractor's already mobilized, could we look at milling down and resurfacing 36th Street to try to level out the road some? And Chris said, I'd love to, but we don't own the right-of-way. So the purpose of this discussion item is one where we could draft out the policies and procedures, send it to the hospital district. I have talked with a couple of the district board members. They were surprised that they owned it, that we didn't own it, and they were also agreeing it's in need of repair. And I know in the turnover process, if we were to do that, Jason, would you like to kind of go over what you reviewed with me that we have done in a prior location, and then we could put this in the form of a letter to the district that if they'd like to have further discussion, this would be the procedures?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner Zork. We have numerous private roads out there, so want to be careful that whenever we do this, kind of like an example that we have when we did this recently was Oceanside subdivision, street lighting, or the street, not the street lighting, but the paving improvements. What they did is they paid for bringing the road up to county standards. So before we accept any roadways into the Indian River County right-of-way and our maintenance program, they need to be brought up to county standards at a minimum in each case. So we would request that they would either bring that up to standards or provide the funding to bring that up to standards prior to us taking that on.
Right, okay, thank you. And currently right now, if you talk to, and this goes back to the days when I rode emergency services, and even today as the trucks are bigger and the springs are much more stiffer, that the last quarter-mile ride of our patients to the hospital once they turn off US 1 is really probably one of the bumpiest, most uncomfortable portion of the ride getting to the hospital. So my request would be is if we could draft a letter the chairman could sign if the hospital district was interested in transferring that right-of-way over to the county. We would need to do an inspection, see what would need to be brought up to county standards. There would be a price tag put on that if they were interested in pursuing the discussion, and then either they could bring it up to standards and sign it over, or they could provide the funds to us and turn it over and administer it with the 37th Street project, whichever would be most cost effective, while the other contractors mobilize it, obviously seems like it would be a smarter move to tie it in with that project.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. 4-0. I'll note that Commissioner Davis.
Wait, say aye.
No, he didn't hear the discussion.
I mean, would it make sense to have the letter just come from either Jason or myself, or would you like to come from the
Actually,
chair?
that's fine.
Okay.
That's, yeah, either.
We'll craft up something.
Okay.
And so that was 4-0, Commissioner Davis absent for the vote, but Commissioner Davis has returned, and we can go to his matters 14C1.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. The North County says hello.
Catch your breath.
So we solved your last problem, now you're giving us another one. I see it's a test.
Yeah, well, I wanted to have Commissioner O'Brien look up the word hiatus, and so.
Definition, if you'd like, sir.
What happened, what the situation is here is there's a piece of property, this is on the Sebastian, Indian River County line, border, I should say, not county line. And it is up in south of 512, and somehow in the layout of this piece of this subdivision, there is literally a gap called the hiatus that nobody apparently owns, with the exception, we think maybe the Queen of Spain or something, going back that far. With that said, we had it surveyed, and one of the property owners to the south is in Sebastian, and this being unincorporated Indian River County, clearly he doesn't have any desire for it. It'd be more of a liability than anything else. The gentleman of Hamrick's Automotive that's further to the west, he's in unincorporated Indian River County, but because he's on the north side of this hiatus. The county's got a policy, anytime they come across something like this, they really require the developer to fix it. There was one over there near Sonny's, on the vacant land north of Sonny's on State Road 60. It had a little same situation. The developer was required to fix that and did so according to the development. The only option that I see here in this is either A, we keep it and maintain it, or B, we try to give it to the property owners to the north. And the reason why I think it makes sense to give it to the property owners to the north is because the property to the south, if I'm not mistaken, is all inside the city limits of Sebastian. So it wouldn't do somebody I don't think any good, and be more of a headache forever to go through that process. So I believe something needs to be done with it, and the reason why it fell through the cracks clearly is because of the jurisdictional boundaries. We weren't worried about it because it wasn't in the city of Sebastian, and Sebastian wasn't worried about it because it wasn't in River County, kind of thing, or vice versa. So I'll turn it over to Dylan if I left something off, Dylan, for you to elaborate on, but.
Yeah, essentially the issue is, as Commissioner Davis described, we have a strip of property roughly about 20 feet wide. David Scriber did some good work in figuring out whether it was a hiatus truly existed, and B, whether that was in the city of Sebastian or unincorporated Indian River County. The determination was that a hiatus did exist between the properties, and two, that it was in unincorporated Indian River County. Question now back to the board that is essentially being offered is, what do we want to do about this as a board? How do we want to get involved? One of the issues that David and I talked about was, well, it would probably be the next step if the board wanted to move forward with something, would be to analyze who actually owns this hiatus. We believe that at some point the underlying property got flipped out from a private property owner to two separate ways, and the estate of that individual or person would essentially have the ownership of this 20-foot strip. We could work with that entity in whatever manner the board wanted to move forward with, but that was kind of our next step, and thought was, if the board wanted to be actively involved, is to figure out really who has the ownership of this strip.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Let me ask you this. That's spending more money than what I want to spend, I think. You would have to, I guess we couldn't just quit claim any interest that we have in that to the property owners, because all that would do is give up any interest that we have. Correct. Not anything as far as any heirs prior to. Well, and Commissioners, the reason why I bring this to your attention is because it caught on fire and did some damage to some adjacent properties. And so we wouldn't allow a private individual to leave a piece of industrial property like this and not go unmaintained without code enforcement action of some kind. So I guess that's why I'm asking you what would y'all like to do, because the situation is either we maintain it or get rid of it. Because I don't see what we've been doing.
I thought he brought this item to us. Why is he making us do the work?
I just need 3 votes.
Come up with a solution then.
All right, Dylan, out of all of them, what's the best for you?
Well, for the best for me, I mean, before we proceed forward, it'd be helpful to know who owns it, and if we figured that out, then we could either work with that person or their estate to either, if the board wished, to then own the property, and then we could try to work with the adjacent property owners to then get it from our ownership to the rest. But that, I mean, I don't know what you know.
Have we checked with the tax assessors, the tax appraiser's office to see if anybody is paying taxes on it?
To my understanding, when I looked at it, there did not appear to be a hiatus within the tax collector or the property appraiser's analysis.
It would seem then to one place to start would be to see who has been paying taxes on it.
When I looked at an aerial, it appeared that the property owner to the south, it was actually within their property, but that was just, you know, where the line looked.
And he doesn't want it, because he's in the city, and he would have to adjust the municipal boundary line, et cetera. And so, yeah, welcome to District 1, gentlemen.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're definitely caught between the property owners to the north and the property owners to the south.
It would make sense somehow to get this to the property owners to the north. That's more. They're already in River County. Sebastian, did the city of Sebastian go all the way to Acorn Street on the south? That's the city limits. I mean, there's not any properties west of Richard and Deb Mayer's. Those are all inside the city limits of Sebastian. Is that correct?
Mayor's property is.
Yeah. What about further to the west?
I simply asked if any board member would be opposed to giving it to letting the people to the north take over.
Mr. Chairman, I did a little research on this actually, and there's been a couple of court cases to the Supreme Court level about a hiatus. And there's 2 important things here. One is, it is, and I'll quote, "It is now a well-settled principle of law that the monuments established by a government surveyor, along with the plat and field notes, absolutely control the boundaries of lands patented on the basis of these monuments, plat, and notes." And the second most important thing is the courts have ruled that these hiatuses are public land subject to survey and disposal as the government saw fit. So basically, the fact that there are monuments and there are 2 survey lines, from what I've read, those survey lines are kind of set in stone. The hiatus then becomes public land, and we're free to dispose of it however we want.
Okay, so I'll go back. Does anybody mind if
The only caveat I have to that is the cases that were discussed, I think were cases that went back to where the hiatus occurred when the federal government was owning the land. So they ended up being the actual prior owner, the Queen of Spain. I think in this circumstance, I'm not sure it went. I think the hiatus occurred later on, and David Scriber is our county surveyor, and I think so it happened later on. So I think there might actually be a private property owner who actually would end up, or their estate who would actually end up owning it, and that's kind of what a title search could figure out. I mean, one of the issues is we could work with the property owners to the north to see if they were interested. The only question I've got is, to the extent some of the property owners to the north take the similar stance as the property owner to the south and say, I don't want it, I don't want to get involved, then we get in this sort of situation where we've got 2 separate property owners who don't want it, as opposed to usually when they're fighting over each other for wanting something, and then we get.
Well, then we'll take Commissioner Fleischer's previous item of increase the number of tires, and that'll be our tire storage depot.
We could certainly move on that.
The reason why the property owner to the south doesn't want it is the way his building is. Literally, you're looking at the north side of his building where there's no access whatsoever. It's a 0 lot line, so his parking lot is on the south side of his building. His storefronts are on the south side of the building. This is just like looking at the.
Dylan, do you think a title search is going to be necessary, and what is a rough estimate of cost?
I mean, traditionally it costs a couple $100. I don't know if we would need to do several because there are several property owners to the north. But I think if we just asked someone and said, look, we're interested in this strip, and let's just focus on that, a couple $100.
Okay, so
if I may, David Scriber, County Surveyor, the strip that's in question, you know, as far as a title search is concerned, I think you only have one owner, and that's the owner of this, or who was the original subdivider. You're not going to find anything in the individual owners that are within that plat, because that subdivision was created, I believe, in 1959. So
What's wrong with that?
It's only going to be their own ownership of each individual lot is all they're going to be able to search. They're not going to know anything else. And Commissioner O'Brien, as you were saying, I think what you were talking about was the original government surveys, which were done back in the 1850s in this area. And there are, in this part of Florida, hiatuses between the subdivisions of sections that were done by the U.S. government surveyors in the 1850s. However, this land that is monumented, this hiatus that's monumented, these are lands that have been conveyed over and over again and subdivided in, more current times in the 1850s. So I don't believe that the hiatus belongs to the government. I believe the underlying ownership is within the heirs of the original subdivider of the Sebastian Grove Estate subdivision. And I say that because, if you've read my memo, the original survey done in the 1850s showed no hiatuses. It showed almost a perfect section with the exception of that portion that fronts on the river. Everything else was a perfectly drawn section, which would have meant that when this subdivision was done and it was noted as a subdivision of the north half of the government lot of that section, it would have meant that, based on that map, that the depth of that government lot should have been 660 feet. The plat only shows a depth of 649 feet. So it doesn't even get to the actual position of a government lot line. And that's where I think the error came in, was when the plat of Sebastian Grove Estates was done in the field, laid out. The parcel owner to the south, his survey shows many monuments found along that line at those individual lots from that subdivision. So the other part of that is, if you want to, find a way to dispose of it, and you want those landowners, and you can talk those landowners into taking those parcels, you're gonna have to create their own little piece of that strip. So that's something that would have to be done, unless they have an HOA, and that, I think that's no HOA.
I'd have
you
heard
could maybe,
complaints about it if there was.
Yeah, transfer it to them, but I think if you want those lot owners to take it, you're gonna have to give them each their own piece of the pie based on their frontage.
And David, so maybe one of the first steps we could do, instead of going through the title search, would maybe just simply start with reaching out to the property owners to the north, get a sense of their interest in the issue. To the extent they are interested in obtaining the rights, then we could come back to the board and kind of update the board in August as to, we talked to the following property owners, they were interested this way or that way, and that way we can give a board the update as to where we are before we start spending any real dollars on going nowhere.
However, I still don't believe we can convey it. I still think we need.
No, but we would at least understand the interest.
Right, and if there was interest there.
Yeah, I mean, if we go out and we contact the property owners to the north, and we get a sense that 10 of the 11 would be thrilled with getting the extra 20 feet added to their property, and they're great, then we can come back to the board and say, hey, we'd like to recommend moving forward with figuring out the title, getting title, and then conveying it out. If we find out, however, that we've talked to the property owners to the north, and we find that only one of, a couple of them are really interested, we can come back to the board and say, well, this is kind of where we are. How would the board like to go forward based upon this information?
It could be our only option is just to continue to mow it, or to start mowing it. So, but we don't know that yet. It'd be nice if we could just get rid of it.
Just add it to the Fellsmere grader route.
And staff, as
20 foot wide, right?
Yeah, it could be a road.
Staff's got concerns about it too, because one thing is we would just be taking over responsibility to maintain it too. I don't think it's of any use as a standalone parcel, so it would only be an expense for us. I'll also add that, if I'm not mistaken, that fire that broke out, one of the property owners who received some property damage already contacted our fire department to ask to get reimbursed for the damage to their facility, which is, I hold a ridiculous position, but if we go in there and rush in and try take ownership and responsibility for this area, I don't know that helps us.
Yeah. And that's the only thing that really, I had known about this for quite a while, but whenever this event happened, that's whenever I had to do something to move
He's
off.
leaving, he gives us the problem.
Yeah.
Heck of a guy.
Couple months to go.
Yeah, are you done, Commissioner?
So what do you, let's, why don't we, I move that we have staff reach out to the adjacent property owners and ask them if they have an interest in their portion of the hiatus.
Second.
I got to say it last, by the way.
What?
Hiatus what?
Is that with two T's?
Can you spell it?
No.
IT.
That's the
Okay,
motion.
okay, we're done.
But-
Can you spell it?
That's Davis. That's Davis Flesher.
Yes,
We have a
sir.
motion from Commissioner Davis.
It's
second from
either that or we're gonna start talking about making it a dog park, and that's a
Ooh, no, too much bacteria.
big run,
Bad for the
big
lagoon.
run though, big run, well
We have a
exercised.
motion from Commissioner Davis, second from Commissioner Fletcher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. We will now,
And this will be concluded by November?
no, probably not. Neither him nor Menzing will be.
We'll call this the Davis something as he leaves and we're stuck dealing with it.
It's more than a hiatus.
We'll now move to Solid Waste Disposal District approval of the
Wait,
minutes.
wait. I think Commissioner Davis had a second item, ready?
Yeah, this is,
You took too long on the first.
just real quick, Commissioners, on letter of support for Treasure Coast Community Health.
Your motion.
Okay. That-
All in favor? Aye. As I said, solid waste. Move the minutes.
Move approval.
We have a motion
Second.
from Commissioner O'Brien, second from Commissioner Fletcher. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. And we have final pay to SCS Engineers for work order number 3 for the new household hazardous waste and citizen drop-off.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Fletcher, second from Commissioner Davis. Anybody from the audience want to speak on this? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. And with that, gentlemen, we may adjourn. Thank you very much.
Came back.